Hello, beautiful people. You've just landed on Muse. Today's featured story is what if Harry was raised by Itachi Uchiha and arrived at Hogwarts as a master of the Sharingan. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you're returning, you know the drill, like and share. Enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 1, The Boy with the Red Eyes. The Scarlet Steam Engine waited at platform 9 3/4, bellowing white clouds into the September morning as families crowded the platform in a chaotic symphony of hoots, meows, and tearful goodbyes. Among them moved a boy who didn't belong, not because of his clothes, which were perfectly ordinary, but because of how he moved through the crowd. Harry Potter navigated the platform with the silent efficiency of a shadow, his trunk balanced effortlessly on one shoulder despite its apparent weight. His emerald eyes scanned the platform methodically, absorbing and categorizing information with each sweep: exits, potential threats, tactical positions. 3 children jostled past him, and Harry shifted his weight imperceptibly, allowing them to pass without contact. He had arrived alone. A family of redheads nearby drew his attention, not for their volume, though they were certainly boisterous, but for the practiced way the mother herded her children, counting heads with the precision of a squad leader. Harry observed them from beneath his carefully arranged fringe, which concealed the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. Itachi had stressed the importance of that concealment. "Your scar is like a clan marking," his guardian had explained. "It identifies you to both allies and enemies. Use that strategically." Harry touched his wrist, feeling the familiar weight of the shuriken holster hidden beneath his sleeve. Itachi had insisted he leave most of his equipment behind. Different world, different rules, he'd said, but had agreed to this small concession. Some habits were too ingrained to abandon entirely. As Harry approached the train, he noticed the stares, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious as parents recognized the boy entering the wizarding world for the first time in a decade. He heard the whispers begin, like the rustling of leaves before a storm. "Is that, it can't be, Harry Potter," he boarded without acknowledging them, finding an empty compartment at the rear of the train. Strategic positioning, back to the wall, clear sight lines to the door and window, multiple exit points. He stowed his trunk and settled by the window, his posture relaxed yet alert. Harry closed his eyes, allowing his mind to drift back to the beginning. 10 years earlier the forest outside Konoha was silent in the way only Shinobi recognized, not peaceful, but watchful. Itachi Uchiha moved through the trees like a ghost, his ANBU mask long discarded but his burden heavier than ever. Blood still clung to his hands, no matter how many times he'd washed them in cold streams. His family's blood. He had completed his mission. The Uchiha uprising had been prevented, Konoha was safe, and his brother lived, carrying the hatred that would one day make him strong. Everything had gone according to plan. Then the sky tore open. Itachi hadn't recognized the jutsu, if it was a jutsu at all. The air itself had seemed to crack, revealing a swirling vortex of light and darkness. His Sharingan activated instinctively, recording every detail of the phenomenon even as he prepared to defend himself. What emerged was not an enemy shinobi, nor any creature Itachi recognized. It was a child, a baby, wailing in the cold night air, wrapped in singed blankets. Itachi's first instinct was to leave it. He was a missing nin now, a traitor to his village and clan. He had no business with a child, especially not with Sasuke's face still haunting his every thought. But something made him pause. Perhaps it was the strange chakra signature emanating from the infant, unlike anything he'd felt before. Or perhaps it was the fresh scar on the child's forehead, still raw and shaped like a lightning bolt. As a shinobi, Itachi recognized an omen when he saw one. He approached cautiously, Sharingan still active. The baby's crying stopped abruptly as Itachi came into view, and green eyes stared up at him with an unsettling intensity. When Itachi reached out, the infant grasped his finger with surprising strength. What happened next would forever change both their paths. As the baby made contact with Itachi, the Uchiha found himself pulled into a vision, a flash of green light, a woman's scream, and the sensation of a soul tearing apart. But most disturbing was the presence Itachi sensed within the child, a fragment of something dark and malevolent, coiled like a parasite around the infant's pure chakra. "What are you?" Itachi murmured, his analytical mind already piecing together possibilities. The child merely blinked, and for an instant, so briefly Itachi might have imagined it, the green eyes seemed to flash red. Inside the blanket, Itachi found a simple note with a name, Harry Potter. No clan affiliation, no village marking, nothing but those two words. The mystery deepened when Itachi realized the characters weren't written in any language he recognized, yet somehow he could read them perfectly. Looking down at the child, Itachi made a decision that defied all logic. He would take the boy with him, at least temporarily, until he could determine where this child belonged. After all, he told himself, there were too many unanswered questions to leave such an unusual chakra source for others to find. What Itachi didn't admit, even to himself, was how the child's eyes reminded him of Sasuke's, innocent, yet touched by trauma no infant should know. "Harry Potter," he said softly, testing the foreign name. "It seems you and I are both displaced tonight." The compartment door slid open, jolting Harry from his memories. A boy with red hair, one of the children from the large family he'd observed earlier, stood in the doorway, hesitating. "Excuse me," the boy said, "do you mind? Everywhere else is full." Harry assessed him quickly, no visible weapons, relaxed posture indicating no immediate threat, chakra levels, normal, as far as he could tell. Still learning to sense the different energy of this world. "Not at all," Harry replied, gesturing to the seat across from him. "I'm Ron, by the way." "Ron Weasley," the boy offered, settling into the seat. "Harry," he responded simply, deciding to observe before revealing more. Ron's eyes widened. Do you have the—" He gestured vaguely toward his forehead. Harry raised an eyebrow, then slowly brushed his fringe aside, revealing the lightning scar. Itachi had warned him this would happen, his identity was apparently well known in this world. "Bloody hell," Ron breathed. "So it's true. You're Harry Potter." Harry nodded once, watching Ron's reaction carefully. "I am. And do you remember anything? About that night?" Ron leaned forward, then seemed to catch himself. "Sorry, probably rude to ask, right?" "I remember green light," Harry said truthfully. It wasn't the full story, but it was what most expected to hear. Itachi had taught him to meet expectations when it served his purpose. Ron looked simultaneously disappointed and relieved. "Oh. Well, anyway, where have you been all this time? Everyone's been wondering." There were all sorts of stories, living with muggles, training with secret wizards, even that you'd been taken by dark creatures. Harry felt his lips quirk slightly. Dark creatures? Not quite. Before Ron could press further, the compartment door slid open again. A girl with bushy hair and large front teeth stood in the doorway, already dressed in her Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Neville's lost one," she said briskly, then paused as her eyes fell on Harry. "Oh, hello. I'm Hermione Granger." "Ron Weasley," muttered Ron around a mouthful of chocolate, he'd started eating sweets from his pocket while they talked. "Harry Potter," Harry offered simply. Unlike Ron's shocked reaction, Hermione's was analytical, her eyes narrowed slightly, assessing him with unexpected intensity. "Are you really?" she asked. "I've read all about you, of course. You're in modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century." Harry tilted his head, genuinely interested. "What do they say?" "Well, that you defeated the darkest wizard of our time when you were just a baby, and then disappeared," Hermione said, seating herself uninvited. "No one's known where you've been. The books speculate you were hidden for your protection." "An incomplete assessment," Harry remarked. Hermione's eyes lit up at the challenge. "What do you mean?" Harry considered how much to reveal. Itachi had advised caution, but also stressed the importance of establishing allies. These two seemed harmless enough, and potentially useful connections. The books weren't there, he said simply. Neither was I, in the way they think. What's that supposed to mean? Ron asked, frowning. It means, Harry said, that history is written by those who weren't present, based on limited information. Before either could question him further, Harry sensed a new presence approaching, 3 figures moving with purpose toward their compartment. He subtly adjusted his position, angling for clearer sight lines to the door. The door slid open again to reveal a pale boy flanked by 2 larger students. The pale boy's posture spoke of privilege and arrogance, reminding Harry of certain clan children he'd observed in Konoha. "They're saying Harry Potter's in this compartment," the pale boy announced, his eyes finding Harry immediately. "Is it you?" "It is," Harry confirmed, studying the newcomers with undisguised assessment. The leader was slight but confident, while his companions were positioned like bodyguards, ineffective ones, given their relaxed stances. "This is Crabbe and Goyle," the boy said, nodding to his companions. "And I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough that might have disguised a snicker. Draco's eyes snapped to him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask yours. Red hair, hand-me-down robes, you must be a Weasley." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He extended his hand to Harry, who observed it without moving. The dynamics were clear, this was an attempted power play, an offer of alliance that doubled as a declaration of superiority. Itachi had taught him to recognize such overtures. Harry stood smoothly, and something in his movement made all 3 boys step back involuntarily. He hadn't activated his Sharingan, hadn't used any jutsu at all, yet his chakra control allowed him to project an aura of contained power that even untrained wizards could sense. "Draco Malfoy," Harry said, his voice perfectly even. "I appreciate your concern for my social standing." He took Draco's hand, shaking it firmly while maintaining direct eye contact. "I'll be making my own assessments of people's worth, however. I find judging others based on family names limiting." Draco's face flushed, but before he could respond, Harry continued. "Your father is Lucius Malfoy, correct? Formerly associated with Voldemort?" The compartment went utterly silent. Ron gasped at Harry's casual use of the feared name, while Draco's face drained of what little color it had. "My father was cleared, he was under the Imperius curse," Draco said stiffly. "Of course," Harry nodded. "I merely find it interesting how different our paths have been, yet here we are at the same crossroads. Wouldn't you agree?" Draco seemed unable to decide if he'd been insulted or not. "I suppose." "Good." Harry released his hand and sat back down. "I look forward to seeing where those paths lead at Hogwarts." The 3 boys retreated shortly after, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. "Blimey," Ron finally said. You weren't scared of them at all." Harry shrugged. "Should I have been?" "Well, no, but Malfoy's dad is really powerful in the Ministry, and, you said you know whose name," Hermione interrupted, staring at Harry with renewed interest. "Voldemort," Harry corrected. "Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. My guardian taught me that." "Your guardian?" Hermione asked eagerly. "Who raised you?" Everyone's wondered, the train whistle interrupted her, and Harry felt the locomotive beginning to slow. "We're arriving," he said, grateful for the timing. "We should change into our robes." As they prepared for arrival, Harry caught Ron and Hermione exchanging puzzled glances. He knew they had questions, everyone would. But Itachi had prepared him for this scrutiny. "Reveal only what serves your purpose," his guardian had advised. "Information is as valuable as any jutsu." Hogwarts Castle loomed against the night sky, its countless windows glowing with warm light. Harry observed it with appropriate appreciation, though his tactical mind automatically noted defensible positions, sight lines, and potential infiltration routes. The first years crowded into boats at the direction of an enormous bearded man named Hagrid, who had greeted Harry with particular enthusiasm. Harry, Ron, and Hermione shared a boat, gliding across the Black Lake toward the castle. "It's exactly as Hogwarts, a history describes," Hermione whispered excitedly. Harry nodded, though his attention was divided. The castle's magic felt different from chakra, more diffuse, less focused, but incredibly potent. He could almost see the flow of it with his normal vision. He wondered what his Sharingan would reveal, but now was not the time to find out. The boats docked beneath the castle, and the first years followed Hagrid up a flight of stone steps to a massive oak door. A stern-looking witch in emerald robes awaited them. "The first years, Professor McGonagall," Hagrid announced. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She led them through the entrance hall, large enough to fit an entire Shinobi training ground, Harry noted, and into a small chamber off the hall. As she explained the sorting ceremony and the 4 houses, Harry maintained his calm exterior while processing the information tactically. Houses as pseudo-clans, he thought. Interesting social dynamic. Creates both loyalty and division. When McGonagall left them to prepare, nervous chatter broke out among the first years. "How exactly do they sort us?" Harry asked Ron quietly. "Some sort of test, I think. Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking." Harry doubted it would be a combat trial, but prepared himself nonetheless. Whatever test they faced, he would approach it with the discipline Itachi had instilled in him. Several students screamed suddenly, and Harry's hand twitched toward his concealed shuriken before he registered the cause. Ghosts had streamed through the back wall, pearly white and translucent, arguing among themselves. Harry observed them with fascination. Such manifestations didn't exist in the Shinobi world. This was his first confirmation that the metaphysical rules differed significantly between dimensions. Professor McGonagall returned, ordering the ghosts away and instructing the first years to form a line. Harry positioned himself between Ron and Hermione, letting his senses expand to catalogue every detail of the great hall as they entered. 4 long tables filled with students. Floating candles illuminating the vast space. A ceiling bewitched to show the night sky. And at the front, a 3-legged stool with a patched, frayed hat. Harry's analytical mind processed each element, but what caught his attention most was the head table, specifically, a thin man in a purple turban. Something about the professor's chakra, or magic, Harry reminded himself, felt wrong. Discordant, like 2 signatures overlapping. His scrutiny was interrupted when the hat on the stool began to sing. Harry listened carefully to its description of the 4 houses, mentally categorizing the traits it emphasized. Gryffindor valued courage and daring, Shinobi traits, though perhaps more impulsive than Itachi would approve. Hufflepuff prized loyalty and hard work, valuable in any world. Ravenclaw cherished intelligence and learning, Itachi would appreciate their dedication to knowledge. And Slytherin valued ambition and cunning, traits essential to successful missions. Interesting, he thought. No clear parallel to Shinobi village structure. McGonagall began calling students forward alphabetically. The sorting hat would be placed on their heads, sometimes declaring a house immediately, sometimes taking longer to decide. When Granger, Hermione, was called, the bushy-haired girl practically ran to the stool. The hat took nearly a minute before shouting, "Gryffindor." Ron groaned beside Harry, who raised an eyebrow questioningly. "My whole family's been in Gryffindor," Ron explained quietly. "I was hoping she'd go somewhere else." Draco Malfoy was called and barely had the hat touched his head when it declared, "Slytherin." He joined Crabbe and Goyle with a smug expression. Finally, McGonagall called, "Potter, Harry." The hall fell silent, then erupted in whispers. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter?" Harry walked forward with measured steps, his face betraying nothing of the heightened alertness he felt. Every eye was upon him, including those of the teachers at the high table. As he turned to sit, he caught sight of an old wizard with a long silver beard, Dumbledore, he presumed, watching him with particular intensity. The hat dropped over his eyes, and a small voice spoke in his ear. It said. Difficult. Very difficult. I've never seen a mind quite like yours before, Mr. Potter. Harry remained silent, though his mental defenses, techniques Itachi had taught him to protect against genjutsu, instinctively activated. Fascinating, the hat continued. Occlumency like barriers, yet not quite. I mean you no harm, Mr. Potter. I only need to see enough to place you correctly. Cautiously, Harry relaxed his mental shield slightly, allowing the hat selective access to his thoughts. Extraordinary, the hat murmured. Raised in another world entirely, trained as a shinobi, you call it? By Itachi Uchiha, no less. You have courage, certainly, and intelligence in abundance. Loyalty too, to your guardian. But such ambition, such cunning, and these eyes you possess. Harry tensed. The hat was probing too deeply, approaching knowledge of the Sharingan. Such a unique power, the hat whispered. Neither chakra nor magic, but something between. In his alarm, Harry's control slipped, just for an instant, and he felt the familiar surge of chakra to his eyes. The Sharingan activated briefly, his vision sharpening dramatically as the hat's magic became visible as swirling patterns of energy. Gryffindor, the hat shouted suddenly, almost frantically. Harry deactivated his Sharingan immediately, but as the hat was lifted from his head, he noticed McGonagall's shocked expression. She had seen the momentary red flash of his eyes. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, unaware of what had transpired. Harry moved toward them, noting that the Weasley twins were chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." He took a seat, accepting handshakes and greetings with polite nods while keeping his attention on the teacher's table. McGonagall had leaned down to whisper something to Dumbledore, whose twinkling eyes were now fixed on Harry with increased interest. Beside him, a hook-nosed professor with greasy black hair was staring at Harry with an expression of mingled shock and suspicion. Ron joined him shortly after being sorted into Gryffindor, and the feast began with food appearing magically on the golden plates. Harry ate methodically, measuring his portions as Itachi had taught him, fuel for optimal performance, not indulgence. "Is that all you're eating?" Ron asked through a mouthful of roast chicken, eyeing Harry's carefully arranged plate. "It's sufficient," Harry replied. He was more interested in gathering information than eating. "Who is the professor with black hair, speaking to Professor Quirrell?" Percy Weasley, Ron's older brother, followed Harry's gaze. "That's Professor Snape, head of Slytherin House. He teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows a lot about the dark arts, Snape does." Harry observed Snape carefully. The professor's eyes kept returning to him with an intensity that suggested more than casual interest. When their eyes met briefly, Harry felt a faint pressure against his mental shields, a subtle probe, testing his defenses. Interesting, Harry thought. Magical mind reading? Similar to the Yamanaka clan techniques, perhaps. As the feast progressed, Harry continued cataloging information while maintaining conversation with his housemates. Neville Longbottom, the boy who had lost his toad, seemed perpetually nervous. Dean Thomas and Seamus Finnegan were discussing their backgrounds, half-blood and pure-blood, respectively. The divisions in Wizarding Society were becoming clearer. When dessert finally disappeared and Dumbledore rose to address the school, Harry listened attentively to the announcements, particularly the warning about the third-floor corridor being forbidden. Itachi had taught him that prohibited areas often contained valuable information or resources. As they followed Percy up to Gryffindor Tower, Harry felt a sharp pain in his scar when they passed the turbaned Professor Quirrell in a corridor. He controlled his reaction instantly, but the sensation confirmed his earlier suspicion: something was wrong with the defense against the dark arts teacher. The Gryffindor common room was warm and circular, filled with plush armchairs. Percy directed the first-year boys to their dormitory, where Harry found his trunk beside a four-poster bed. While his roommates chatted excitedly, Harry methodically unpacked only what was necessary, keeping most of his possessions secured in his trunk. From a hidden compartment, he withdrew a small scroll, one of several Itachi had prepared for him, containing training regimens and advice. "What's that?" Ron asked, noticing the unfamiliar script. "Notes from home," Harry replied simply, tucking the scroll away as the other boys approached. That night, after his roommates had fallen asleep, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed and closed his eyes, entering a meditative state Itachi had taught him. He expanded his senses throughout the dormitory, the tower, feeling the ebb and flow of magic around him. Different from chakra, yet manipulable in similar ways. He would need to adapt his techniques to this new energy. He would need allies, intelligence, and caution. Most of all, he would need to understand why his scar had reacted to Quirrell, and what it meant about the fragment of darkness Itachi had sensed within him all those years ago. Harry opened his eyes, gazing out the window at the moon hovering over the forbidden forest. Whatever challenges awaited him in this world, he would face them with the skills and discipline Itachi had instilled in him. After all, a shinobi adapted to any environment. And Harry Potter was nothing if not adaptable. "Did you see his eyes?" McGonagall's whisper was urgent as she addressed Dumbledore in his office after the feast. Just for a moment, when the hat was sorting him, they changed color. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, fingers steepled in thought. "Red, you said?" "Red with some kind of pattern. I've never seen anything like it." McGonagall paced the office. "And his demeanor, Albus. No first-year moves like that. He carries himself like a soldier." "Indeed." Dumbledore's voice was measured, but concern lined his face. "I have spent 10 years searching for him, Minerva. The tracking charms I placed on him as a baby were distorted somehow, leading nowhere. Then suddenly, 3 months ago, they activated again. Where was he all this time? Certainly not with his aunt and uncle as you intended." "No." Dumbledore rose and approached Fawkes, stroking the phoenix's feathers. "When I finally located him, he was already en route to London. I arranged for Hagrid to meet him with his key and letter, but Harry merely accepted them politely and stated he'd see us on September 1st. He refused to explain where he'd been or with whom. Could it have been dark wizards? Death Eaters seeking to mold him? I don't believe so. The magic surrounding him is unfamiliar. Not dark, precisely, but different from anything in our world." Dumbledore turned back to face her. "We must observe him carefully, Minerva. Whatever happened to Harry Potter in these past 10 years has given him abilities we don't understand. Should we inform the Ministry?" Dumbledore's expression hardened slightly. "Not yet. I fear they would see him as a weapon to be controlled rather than a child to be protected." "Is he a child, though?" McGonagall asked softly. "He doesn't act like one. All the more reason to ensure he finds humanity here at Hogwarts." Dumbledore returned to his desk. "Please ask Severus to join us. He noticed something as well, I believe." When Snape arrived minutes later, his customary scowl was etched deeper than usual. "The boy is an Occlumens," he stated without preamble. "Advanced shields, unlike any I've encountered. I could not penetrate his mind at all. Occlumency at 11? McGonagall looked stunned. "That's impossible." "Evidently not," Snape replied dryly. "And there's something else. When he looked at me, it felt as though he was reading me instead." Dumbledore leaned forward. "Could it have been legilimency?" "No," Snape said firmly. "Different. More, analytical. As though he could deduce my thoughts from the smallest physical tells." He hesitated, then added reluctantly, "It reminded me of the Dark Lord's perception, but without the malice." A heavy silence fell over the office. "We must proceed carefully," Dumbledore finally said. "Harry Potter has returned to us, but not as the boy we expected. We need to discover who raised him, what abilities he possesses, and most importantly, where his allegiances lie. And if those allegiances aren't with us? McGonagall asked softly. Dumbledore's eyes lost their twinkle entirely. Then we may face a greater challenge than we ever anticipated. Today we will be brewing a simple potion to cure boils, Professor Snape announced, his dark eyes sweeping the dungeon classroom. Instructions are on the board. Begin. Harry had positioned himself between Hermione and Ron, observing as students hurried to collect ingredients. The dynamics of this class fascinated him. Snape clearly favored Slytherin students while finding fault with Gryffindors, particularly Neville Longbottom, who seemed terrified of the professor. Strategically inefficient, Harry thought. Fear might motivate short-term compliance but hindered optimal learning. He approached potion-making methodically, arranging ingredients in order of use, preparing each component with the precision Itachi had taught him for mixing soldier pills and antidotes. Hermione worked with similar care beside him, though her movements were more frantic, her eyes constantly darting to the instructions. "You're not following the board," she whispered, noticing Harry crushing his snake fangs differently than instructed. "The board says to powder them," Harry replied quietly. "But the cell walls contain properties that are better preserved with a mortar technique that leaves larger fragments intact." Hermione looked skeptical. "How could you possibly know that?" Harry didn't explain that Itachi had trained him extensively in poison crafting and antidotes, skills essential for shinobi missions. Instead, he simply said, "Different methodology, same principles." Snape swept toward them suddenly, having overheard. "Potter," he said silkily, "sharing your extensive potions expertise with the class, are you? Perhaps you believe yourself above following simple instructions." The entire class went silent. Harry met Snape's gaze steadily, noting the subtle probe against his mental shields. "No, sir. I'm applying principles of compound extraction to maximize efficacy." Snape's eyes narrowed. 10 points from Gryffindor for arrogance. He examined Harry's mortar, then the simmering cauldron. A flicker of something, surprise, crossed his face before his scowl returned. "Continue." As Snape moved away, Draco Malfoy smirked from across the room. Harry observed him whispering to Crabbe, who slowly repositioned himself near Neville's workstation. Harry recognized the setup immediately. Draco was orchestrating an accident. Sure enough, moments later, Crabbe stumbled, bumping Neville as he added porcupine quills to his cauldron. Neville's potion began to melt the cauldron, spilling across the stone floor and causing students to jump onto their stools. Harry moved without thinking, chakra enhancing his speed as he pulled Neville away from the spreading potion. In the same fluid motion, he withdrew a kunai from his sleeve and sliced through Neville's robe where the potion had splashed, preventing it from reaching the boy's skin. The class froze in shock at Harry's display of reflexes, and the weapon suddenly visible in his hand. Snape's wand appeared instantly, vanishing the spilled potion. "Potter," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "explain yourself." Harry lowered the kunai, aware he'd revealed more than intended. "Reactive defense, sir. The potion was caustic. And you routinely carry bladed weapons to potions class?" Snape's voice dripped with suspicion. "I routinely carry tools for emergencies," Harry replied evenly. "Like just now." The classroom was utterly silent, students staring wide-eyed at the exchange, and at the strange knife in Harry's hand, unlike any they'd seen before. Then something more shocking occurred. As Harry met Snape's intense gaze, his eyes briefly flashed crimson, 3 tomos spinning around his pupils before fading back to green so quickly some students thought they'd imagined it. Snape took an involuntary step backward, his face paling. "Class dismissed," he snapped. "Potter, remain behind." As students hurriedly packed their belongings, whispering frantically, Ron gave Harry a wide-eyed look. "What was that?" he hissed. Later, Harry murmured. To Neville, who was trembling beside him, he said, "You're uninjured. The potion didn't touch your skin." Thanks, Neville stammered. How did you move so fast? Before Harry could respond, Snape barked, out, all of you. Except Potter. When the classroom emptied, Snape closed the door with a flick of his wand and turned to Harry, his expression unreadable. What are you? He asked bluntly. Harry considered his options. Denial seemed pointless, his reflexes and the kunai had already revealed too much. I am Harry Potter, he answered simply. Do not play games, Snape hissed. Those eyes, that was no ordinary magic. And no wizard child moves as you do. Harry remained silent, weighing how much to reveal against Itachi's warnings about exposing his abilities. Snape's eyes narrowed. The headmaster will need to be informed of this incident. You will explain yourself to him, Potter, not to me. As you wish, Professor. Snape studied him for a long moment. Your mother had extraordinary eyes as well, he said finally, his tone strange. But they were never like that. The reference to his mother caught Harry off guard, the first personal connection to his parents he'd encountered. You knew her? He asked before he could stop himself. Something flickered across Snape's face, pain, perhaps. I did. But she never displayed abilities like yours. Nor did your father. His voice hardened on the last word. Whatever you are now, Potter, it is not what they intended you to be. Harry felt an unfamiliar emotion stir within him, not anger, but something deeper. For all Itachi's training in emotional control, this touched something primal. With respect, Professor, he said carefully, neither of us can know what they would have intended. They died protecting me. My guardian did the same in his way. Your guardian, Snape repeated. And who might that be? Harry simply looked at him, silent once more. Snape's lip curled. Very well. Keep your secrets for now, Potter. But be warned, Hogwarts is not a place for weapons or whatever combat techniques you've been taught. The headmaster will want answers, and unlike me, he has ways of compelling them. I doubt that, Harry said, so softly it was almost inaudible. Snape's eyes widened fractionally before his scowl deepened. Get out, he snapped. And leave your tools in your dormitory henceforth. Harry nodded politely, slipping the kunai back into its concealed holster as he gathered his belongings. He could feel Snape's eyes on him as he left, tracking his movements with newfound wariness. In the corridor outside, Ron and Hermione waited, their faces filled with questions. Draco Malfoy lurked nearby, his expression calculating. What happened? Hermione demanded as they walked toward their next class. What was that knife? And your eyes, they changed color. Harry glanced around, ensuring no one else was within earshot. Not here, he said quietly. Tonight, in the common room. But, later, Harry repeated firmly. Some knowledge is dangerous in the wrong hands. He felt Draco's eyes on his back as they walked away, and knew his caution was warranted. The Malfoy heir had orchestrated the potion incident deliberately, likely hoping to embarrass Neville or disrupt the class. Instead, he'd gained information about Harry's abilities, information Harry had no doubt would soon reach Draco's father and his connections at the Ministry. The political implications were clear. Harry had revealed himself as more than the typical wizard child they'd expected. Now the wizarding world would want to know exactly what he was, and more importantly, who had made him that way. As they climbed the stairs toward Transfiguration, Harry mentally composed the letter he would send to Itachi tonight, using the special scroll his guardian had prepared for cross-dimensional communication. The Sharingan has been seen, he would write. The game begins earlier than we anticipated. Word spread quickly through Hogwarts. By dinner, wild rumors circulated about Harry Potter's strange eyes and impossible reflexes in potions class. Some claimed he'd performed wandless magic, others insisted he'd conjured a sword from thin air to save Neville from certain death. Harry ignored the whispers, eating methodically while observing the teacher's table. Snape was engaged in intense conversation with Dumbledore, both occasionally glancing in his direction. The turbaned professor, Quirrell, was watching him too, with an expression that seemed divided between fear and hunger. "Harry," Hermione whispered across the table, "everyone's talking about what happened." "Let them talk," Harry replied calmly. "Rumors burn themselves out eventually." Ron shook his head in disbelief. "Not these rumors. Fred and George heard you pulled a weird dagger out of nowhere and moved faster than anyone's ever seen. And something about your eyes glowing red?" Harry sipped his pumpkin juice. "Exaggeration is common in information transmission. But something did happen," Hermione pressed. "I saw your eyes change, just for a second." Harry set down his goblet, considering. These two had potential as allies. Hermione's intelligence and Ron's knowledge of wizarding culture could prove valuable. Moreover, they'd shown loyalty by waiting for him after potions instead of fleeing like the others. "I'll explain what I can," he said finally. "But not everything. Not yet." After dinner, they claimed a secluded corner of the Gryffindor common room. Harry cast a subtle glance around, ensuring no one was within earshot, before addressing their eager faces. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us," he began. "Can I trust you with that?" Both nodded solemnly. "I wasn't raised in the wizarding world," Harry said, "or in the Muggle world as most of you understand it. When Voldemort attacked my parents, something unusual happened, a dimensional rift." "A what?" Ron asked, bewildered. "A tear between worlds," Hermione explained, her eyes wide with fascination. "There are theories in both Muggle science and magical research about parallel dimensions, but, it's not theory," Harry interrupted. "I was found in another world, one where power manifests differently. Not as magic, but as chakra." He went on to explain the basics, how he'd been discovered by a shinobi named Itachi Uchiha, who recognized something unusual in Harry's energy signature and took him in. He described the shinobi way of life in broad strokes, emphasizing the discipline and training without revealing too many specifics about techniques or the Sharingan. "So this Itachi taught you to fight?" Ron asked, clearly impressed. "He taught me to survive," Harry corrected. "To analyze, to plan, to execute. Combat skills are only part of that." "And the knife, the kunai, you called it?" Hermione prompted. "A standard tool," Harry said with a shrug. "Like a wand is to wizards." He could see they had dozens more questions, but he'd revealed enough for now. "That's all I can share tonight," he said firmly. "The rest will come with trust and time." "Why tell us anything at all?" Hermione asked shrewdly. "You barely know us." Harry allowed himself a small smile, the first genuine one they'd seen from him. "Because isolation is tactically unsound. Even the strongest shinobi needs allies." Later that night, alone in his four-poster bed, Harry unrolled the special communication scroll Itachi had prepared. They had discovered years ago that certain seals could bridge the dimensional gap, allowing limited correspondence. Harry wrote his message concisely, detailing the day's events and the political dynamics he'd observed. As he finished, the ink sank into the parchment, disappearing as it traveled across dimensions. Minutes later, new words formed on the scroll. Itachi's response: "The revelation was inevitable. Use it strategically. Remember, they will fear what they don't understand, then seek to control what they fear. Your eyes are your greatest asset and your greatest vulnerability. Trust sparingly, but isolation makes you a target. The fragment within you may resonate with this world differently. Be vigilant for changes in your chakra and scar. Train at dawn. Maintain discipline. Adapt to their methods while preserving our own. You are not alone, Harry." The last sentence warmed him unexpectedly. Itachi was never demonstrative, rarely offering comfort or praise. This simple acknowledgement spoke volumes. Harry rolled the scroll carefully and sealed it with a drop of chakra-infused blood. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Dumbledore would certainly summon him, the Ministry might become involved, and the other students would watch his every move with suspicion or fascination. Let them, Harry thought as he closed his eyes to meditate. They see only what I allow them to see. For now, that would have to be enough. Chapter 2, Techniques of Two Worlds. Dawn painted the Hogwarts grounds in hues of gold and amber as Harry completed his 40th lap around the Black Lake. His breathing remained controlled, his movements fluid despite the early hour. He had risen before any of his dorm mates, slipping from Gryffindor Tower while the castle still slumbered. Training was non-negotiable, Itachi had insisted. Especially now. Harry transitioned smoothly from running to a series of precise taijutsu forms, his body flowing from stance to stance with practiced discipline. The physical exertion centered him, preparing his mind for the challenges ahead. He was halfway through a complex sequence when he sensed a presence watching him. Without breaking form, Harry extended his awareness outward, identifying the observer's location in the shadow of a large beech tree. "Good morning, Professor," he called, completing his routine with a final controlled movement before turning toward Dumbledore. The headmaster stepped forward, his blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Forgive the intrusion, Harry. I found myself taking an early morning stroll and couldn't help but admire your dedication." Harry knew it was no coincidence. "Exercise helps maintain focus," he replied simply. "Indeed." Dumbledore smiled gently. "Though most students find sleep equally beneficial." Harry said nothing, waiting. Dumbledore would not have sought him out at dawn without purpose. "Those movements," the headmaster continued, "they seemed quite structured. Not typical exercise, I think." "Kata," Harry explained. "Forms that train muscle memory and focus." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "I wonder if you might visit my office after breakfast. There are matters we should discuss, about yesterday's potions incident, among other things." "Of course, Headmaster." "Excellent. The password is Chocolate Frog." With a gentle smile and nod, Dumbledore turned back toward the castle, his purple robe swishing softly against the dewy grass. Harry watched him go, then resumed his training. Whatever interrogation awaited him in Dumbledore's office, he would face it with a clear mind and prepared body. The gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office sprang aside at the password, revealing a spiraling staircase. Harry ascended steadily, cataloging details, the time required to climb, the sound-dampening properties of the stone, potential exit routes if needed. "Enter," Dumbledore called before Harry could knock. The office was circular and filled with silver instruments that emitted gentle whirring sounds and puffs of smoke. Portraits of former headmasters lined the walls, their occupants watching Harry with undisguised curiosity. A magnificent red and gold bird, a phoenix, Harry recognized from Itachi's teachings on summoning creatures, perched beside the desk. Dumbledore sat behind the desk, his fingers steepled. Professors McGonagall and Snape stood to either side of him, forming a subtle tribunal. "Please, sit," Dumbledore gestured to a comfortable chair before his desk. Harry sat with practiced efficiency, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees, positioned to move quickly if necessary. He noted how all three professors reacted to his posture, McGonagall with a slight widening of eyes, Snape with a narrowing of his, and Dumbledore with a barely perceptible nod of recognition. "Thank you for coming, Harry," Dumbledore began warmly. "I hope your first days at Hogwarts have been enlightening." "They have," Harry agreed neutrally. "Professor Snape has informed me of an unusual incident in yesterday's potions class." Harry met Dumbledore's gaze steadily. "I prevented a student from being injured by a caustic potion." "Using methods most unusual for a first-year wizard," McGonagall interjected. "Or any wizard, for that matter." "I used what I know," Harry replied simply. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. "And what exactly do you know, Harry?" "For 10 years, we believed you were safely housed with your mother's sister. Imagine our surprise when our tracking charms suddenly activated months ago, leading us not to Surrey, but to London, with you already in possession of your Hogwarts letter." Harry considered his response carefully. Outright deception would be detected, these were not ordinary interrogators. Partial truth would serve better. I was raised elsewhere, he said. By a guardian who recognized my potential and trained me accordingly. This guardian, Snape said silkily, does he have a name? He does. Snape's jaw tightened at Harry's obvious evasion. Harry, Dumbledore said gently, we ask not out of idle curiosity, but concern. The magic you displayed yesterday, the weapon, the unusual reflexes, and particularly your eyes, these suggest training of a very specific nature. Harry noted the careful avoidance of the word dark. Political delicacy, or genuine openness to unfamiliar magic. My training was thorough, Harry acknowledged. But not dark, if that's your concern. My guardian values balance, discipline, and protection of the innocent. Yet he taught an 11-year-old combat techniques and equipped you with bladed weapons, McGonagall observed, her Scottish brogue sharpening with disapproval. In his world, children younger than me have died for lack of such training, Harry said quietly. He wished to ensure I wouldn't be among them. The room fell silent at his words. The professors exchanged glances, and Harry could read their silent communication, concern, confusion, and calculation. His world? Dumbledore finally asked. Harry met the headmaster's penetrating gaze. A place very different from this one. Where power manifests not as magic, but as chakra, controlled through different means, for different purposes. Another magical community? McGonagall suggested. Perhaps in Asia. Another dimension entirely, Harry corrected calmly. Had he been watching anyone else, Harry might have missed the momentary flash of recognition in Dumbledore's eyes, quickly masked, but undeniably there. The headmaster knew something of dimensional theory. That's preposterous, Snape scoffed. Dimensional travel is theoretical at best, and certainly beyond the capabilities of, I did not travel there by choice or design, Harry interrupted. The clash between Voldemort's killing curse and my mother's protection created a rift. My guardian found me on the other side. Dumbledore raised a hand, silencing Snape's retort. These are extraordinary claims, Harry. Yet they would explain the failure of our tracking charms all these years. I have no reason to fabricate my origins, Harry said simply. Perhaps not, Dumbledore conceded. But you do seem reluctant to share details about your guardian or the nature of your training. Harry inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the point. Some knowledge is dangerous in the wrong context. I'm still determining what's appropriate to share in this world. This world, McGonagall repeated faintly. Albus, surely you don't believe, I find, Dumbledore interrupted gently, that my beliefs have needed considerable expansion throughout my long life, Minerva. He turned back to Harry. Your eyes, Harry. Professor Snape reported they changed color briefly during yesterday's incident. Might you explain that phenomenon? Harry weighed his options. The Sharingan was his most closely guarded secret, yet its existence was now known. Better to provide controlled information than leave them to dangerous speculation. It's called the Sharingan, he said carefully. A genetic ability my guardian possessed, which manifested in me under his training. Genetic? Snape's voice sharpened with interest. You claim to have inherited a bloodline trait from someone not related to you? Harry met his gaze steadily. We believe it resonated with something already within me. A fragment left by Voldemort's attack. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Dumbledore's expression grew grave, while McGonagall gasped softly. And what does this Sharingan do, precisely? Dumbledore asked, his tone carefully measured. It enhances perception and analytical ability, Harry explained, deliberately understating its full capabilities. Useful for responding quickly to threats, like yesterday's potions accident. I see. Dumbledore steepled his fingers again, studying Harry intently. And your guardian, this man who raised you and trained you in these unusual abilities, where is he now? Beyond your reach, Harry replied simply. but still guiding me. A heavy silence fell over the office. Harry, Dumbledore finally said, his voice gentle but firm, I must be honest with you. Your situation presents us with an unprecedented challenge. While I have no wish to interfere with training that has clearly made you remarkably capable, Hogwarts has standards regarding appropriate behavior and equipment. Carrying weapons, even for defensive purposes, cannot be permitted. Harry nodded once. He had anticipated this restriction. I understand. Furthermore, Dumbledore continued, I would ask that you exercise extreme caution regarding this. Sharingan. Many in our world fear what they don't understand, and there are those who might seek to exploit unusual abilities. I'm aware of the political implications, Harry replied, causing McGonagall to raise her eyebrows at his mature phrasing. Indeed. Dumbledore smiled slightly. Which brings me to my final point, I would very much like to learn more about this dimensional upbringing of yours, Harry. Perhaps in private sessions. I believe there is much we could teach each other. Harry recognized the offer for what it was, partly genuine curiosity, partly a way to monitor him closely. I would find that educational, headmaster. Excellent. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. We'll begin next week. For now, I believe you have charms class to attend. Harry rose smoothly, recognizing the dismissal. Thank you for your understanding, professors. As he turned to leave, Dumbledore added, one last thing, Harry. Whatever world raised you, remember that you are home now. Hogwarts welcomes you back to where you belong. Harry paused at the door, considering the headmaster's words. Home was a concept Itachi had rarely discussed. The exiled shinobi had no home to offer Harry except in the discipline of their training and the bond they had formed. Thank you, Professor, he replied neutrally before descending the spiral staircase. Behind him, 3 professors exchanged troubled glances. Well? McGonagall prompted. He believes what he's telling us, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. Whether it's objectively true is another matter entirely. The boy is dangerous, Snape stated flatly. Trained in combat, possessing unknown abilities, and clearly unwilling to fully disclose his background. He's also 11 years old, Severus, McGonagall countered. Regardless of his unusual upbringing. Is he? Dumbledore mused. I wonder. The phoenix trilled softly, drawing their attention. Even Fawkes senses something unusual about young Harry, Dumbledore noted. We would be wise to follow his example, observe carefully, but withhold judgment. He turned to Snape. Keep a close eye on him in your classes, Severus. Not as an adversary, but as someone uniquely qualified to recognize certain signs. Snape's lip curled slightly, but he nodded. And the ministry? McGonagall asked. Surely they'll need to be informed about a boy adjusting to his first year at Hogwarts. Dumbledore interrupted gently. I see no reason to involve them at this stage, do you? The implication was clear. Whatever Harry Potter was, whatever he might become, they would handle it internally, at least for now. Swish and flick. Professor Flitwick demonstrated the proper wand movement again. And don't forget the pronunciation, Wingardium Leviosa. Harry observed the tiny charms professor with interest. Despite his stature, Flitwick moved with the precision of a trained duelist, something Harry had noted immediately. There was combat experience there, carefully concealed beneath cheerful enthusiasm. Harry held his wand, Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, contemplating its function. Unlike chakra, which flowed through specific pathways in the body, magic seemed to require an external focus. Fascinating, from a tactical perspective. Your turn now, everyone. Flitwick called. Around the classroom, students began attempting the levitation charm with varying degrees of success. Ron, seated beside Harry, was waving his wand wildly with no results. Across the aisle, Hermione was lecturing him on proper pronunciation. You're saying it wrong, she insisted. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Harry focused on his own feather, analyzing the spell's components. The wand movement created a pattern in the magical energy field he could almost visualize with his normal sight. The incantation shaped intent, directing that energy toward the target. Conceptually similar to hand signs for jutsu, Harry realized. He raised his wand, then paused. An experiment presented itself. Instead of simply following instructions, he attempted to integrate the magical technique with chakra principles. Harry channeled a small amount of chakra into his wand hand, synchronizing it with the magical energy as he performed the swish and flick motion. Wingardium Leviosa, he intoned clearly, focusing his intent not just through the wand, but through his chakra network. The feather before him didn't simply rise, it shot upward and began moving in a perfect figure-8 pattern, maintaining constant altitude with a stability none of the other students had achieved. "Oh my goodness," squeaked Professor Flitwick, nearly tumbling off his stack of books. "Mr. Potter, that's remarkable control. 10 points to Gryffindor." The entire class turned to stare at Harry's feather, which continued its precise aerial dance. "How are you making it move like that?" Hermione demanded, her own successfully levitated feather forgotten. "The spell only lifts objects, it doesn't direct them in patterns." Harry allowed the feather to descend gently. "I modified the energy flow," he explained quietly. "Energy flow?" Hermione's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Before Harry could respond, Flitwick appeared beside their desk, practically bouncing with excitement. "Mr. Potter, would you mind demonstrating that again for the class?" he asked eagerly. Such precise control in a first attempt is extraordinary. Aware of the attention now focused on him, Harry repeated the spell, this time making the feather trace a spiral pattern upward before holding steady near the ceiling. "Magnificent!" Flitwick clapped his tiny hands. "You know, this reminds me of advanced charm work involving controlled path levitation, typically not taught until Newt level. May I ask how you conceptualized this approach?" Harry considered how to explain chakra control principles without revealing too much. "I visualized the magic as a continuous flow rather than a single impulse," he said carefully. "Like water in a stream that can be redirected." Flitwick's eyes widened with interest. A most unusual analogy for a first year, and yet remarkably effective. 5 more points to Gryffindor for innovative magical theory. As class ended, Flitwick called Harry back. "Mr. Potter, I wonder if you might be interested in some additional reading on magical flow theory. Your approach suggests an intuitive understanding that could be further developed." "I would appreciate that, Professor," Harry replied genuinely. Flitwick beamed, scribbling on a piece of parchment. "This will give you access to some specific books in the restricted section. Nothing dangerous, mind you, just advanced theory typically reserved for older students." Harry accepted the note with a respectful nod. "Thank you." As he left the classroom, he found Ron and Hermione waiting in the corridor. "That was bloody brilliant!" Ron exclaimed. "How did you do that on your first try?" "Yes, do tell," came a drawling voice from behind them. Draco Malfoy stood with his arms crossed, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "I'm sure we'd all love to hear what kind of magic the famous Harry Potter has been learning." Harry assessed Draco's posture, the calculated slouch that attempted to project casual confidence, undermined by the tension in his shoulders. The Slytherin was both threatened and intrigued. "Standard first-year charms," Harry replied evenly. "With focused intent." "Right," Draco scoffed. "Just like that knife you pulled in potions was standard equipment. Everyone's talking about it, you know. The Daily Prophet would probably pay good money to learn where Harry Potter really spent the last 10 years. The threat was thinly veiled. Harry met Draco's gaze steadily, noting how the other boy struggled not to look away. "Speculation makes for poor journalism," Harry said calmly. "But people believe what they want to believe." He turned away, indicating to Ron and Hermione they should continue walking. He could feel Draco's glare on his back as they rounded the corner. "He's going to be trouble," Hermione murmured. His father has connections at the ministry and with the school governors. Political leverage, Harry nodded. Expected. You're not worried? Ron asked incredulously. Concern without action is wasted energy, Harry replied, quoting one of Itachi's frequent lessons. I'll adapt as needed. They entered the great hall for lunch, where the buzz of conversation noticeably dimmed as Harry walked in. Word of his charm's performance had apparently spread as quickly as the potions incident. I don't understand how you can be so calm with everyone staring, Hermione whispered as they sat down. Harry served himself methodically, proteins, complex carbohydrates, and vegetables in carefully balanced portions. Attention is just information gathering, he said. It becomes problematic only when it prevents mission completion. Mission? Ron repeated, piling his plate with considerably less dietary planning. You talk like everything's some kind of, I don't know, operation or something. Old habit, Harry admitted. My guardian's influence. Hermione leaned forward, lowering her voice. About that, you mentioned combining magic with chakra principles earlier. Could you explain more about how that works? It's not in any of the books I've read. Harry evaluated her request. Hermione's intelligence made her a valuable ally, and explaining basic principles could build trust without revealing sensitive techniques. Chakra is energy that flows through specific channels in the body, he explained quietly. It can be directed and shaped through concentration and physical gestures. Magic seems similar but more diffuse. Less structured, more intent-based. So you're channeling both at once? Hermione's eyes widened with fascination. Experimenting with integration, Harry corrected. The results are still unpredictable. Could you teach us? She asked eagerly. Harry shook his head slightly. Not without years of foundational training. It would be like trying to perform complex arithmancy without learning basic mathematics first. Hermione looked disappointed but nodded in understanding. Ron seemed equally intrigued but less academically motivated. So does this chakra stuff make you faster and stronger too? He asked through a mouthful of shepherd's pie. Because the way you moved in potions was mental. Physical enhancement is one application, Harry confirmed. Further discussion was interrupted as Fred and George Weasley slid into seats across from them, identical grins on their freckled faces. Harry Potter, said one twin, Fred, Harry thought, based on subtle differences in posture. Man of mystery, continued George. Wielder of strange knives, added Fred. Master of impossibly advanced magic, finished George. We're impressed, they concluded in unison. Harry regarded them neutrally, aware that their playful demeanor concealed shrewd assessment. The twins were gathering information, just like everyone else. Your reputation precedes you as well, Harry replied. Fred and George Weasley. Pranksters. Inventors. Strategic thinkers disguised as troublemakers. The twins' eyebrows rose in perfect synchronization. He's good, Fred remarked to George. Unervingly so, George agreed. We have a proposition for you, Harry Potter, Fred continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. Word is, you've got skills beyond the ordinary first-year curriculum. And we're always interested in extraordinary skills, George added. Particularly those that might complement our own unique talents. Harry considered them carefully. The twins possessed intelligence and creativity, valuable traits in allies. But their motivations remained unclear. What specifically interests you? He asked. We've been developing certain products, Fred explained. Enchanted items with practical applications, pranking, mostly, George interjected. But with serious potential, Fred countered. And we've hit some magical barriers. Limitations in standard spell theory, George clarified. But your approach to magic seems unconventional, they finished together. Harry understood immediately. You want me to help solve technical problems in your inventions. Smart and direct, Fred grinned. We like that. In exchange for? Harry prompted. The twins exchanged glances. Our extensive knowledge of Hogwarts' secret passages, George offered. Access to resources difficult for first years to obtain, Fred added. And our discretion regarding any unusual abilities you might demonstrate during our collaboration, they concluded meaningfully. A fair proposal, Harry assessed. Information exchange with mutual benefit. I'll consider it, he replied, noting their surprised expressions. They had clearly expected either immediate rejection or acceptance. After I evaluate potential risks and benefits. The twins recovered quickly, nodding in appreciation of his caution. Wise, said Fred. Very Slytherin of you, George added with a wink. We'll await your decision, they said, rising from the table with synchronized movements that spoke of long practice. As they departed, Ron shook his head in amazement. They never approach first years for their schemes. You must have really impressed them. Or they want to keep an eye on him, Hermione suggested shrewdly. Everyone does. Harry simply nodded. She wasn't wrong. The afternoon brought Harry's first flying lesson, an experience he approached with methodical interest. Flight was not a common shinobi ability, though certain techniques allowed for aerial maneuvers and extended jumps. True sustained flight would be a tactical advantage worth developing. Madame Hooch, a hawk-eyed woman with short gray hair, instructed the first years to stand beside the school brooms laid out on the grass. Stick your right hand over your broom and say, up, she directed. Harry extended his hand over the ancient broom, sensing the magical energy within it, faint but present, like a dormant creature waiting to be awakened. Up, he commanded, infusing the word with just a touch of chakra-enhanced intent. The broom leapt into his hand with such force that several nearby students jumped in surprise. Harry tested its balance, finding it poorly distributed with a slight pull to the left, defects he would need to compensate for when airborne. Madame Hooch demonstrated the proper mounting technique, then corrected students' grips. When she reached Harry, she paused. Potter, she said, examining his hand position, have you flown before? No, Madame Hooch. Her eyes narrowed skeptically. Your grip is perfect. Unusual for a first-timer. Harry didn't explain that he'd analyzed the biomechanics of the demonstrated grip and adjusted for optimal control. Instead, he simply said, I'm a quick study. Indeed, she replied before moving on to correct Malfoy, who had apparently been gripping his broom incorrectly for years. When Madame Hooch gave the signal to kick off gently, hover, then touch back down, Harry executed the maneuver with precise control. The sensation was fascinating, the broom responding not just to physical direction but to his intent, similar to chakra manipulation but through an external conduit. The lesson took an unexpected turn when Neville Longbottom, nervous and jumpy, pushed off too hard and lost control of his broom. Harry tracked his erratic ascent, calculating trajectory, and noting the moment Neville's grip failed. As the boy plummeted, Harry was already moving, chakra channeled to his legs for an enhanced jump. He intercepted Neville mid-fall, catching him around the waist and twisting to absorb the impact as they hit the ground. They landed in a controlled roll, Harry taking the brunt of the force while keeping Neville protected. For the second time in as many days, the class stared in stunned silence at Harry's inexplicable reflexes. Potter! Madame Hooch exclaimed, hurrying over. That was, how did you? She stopped, apparently unable to formulate the question properly. Neville scrambled to his feet, wide-eyed and trembling. You caught me, he stammered. You jumped so high, Mr. Potter, Madame Hooch said, regaining her composure, while your quick thinking prevented injury, such acrobatics during a flying lesson are strictly prohibited. 5 points from Gryffindor for endangering yourself. Harry accepted the rebuke with a nod, though he noted she had awarded no points for saving Neville. Interesting values hierarchy, rule adherence above practical results. However, she continued more quietly, that was remarkable spatial awareness. Have you considered trying out for Quidditch next year? First years aren't allowed their own brooms, but your natural aptitude is, unusual. Before Harry could respond, Professor McGonagall's voice rang out across the grounds. "Mr. Potter. A word, if you please." The flying instructor straightened. "Minerva, I saw," Rolanda, McGonagall interrupted, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Potter, come with me." As Harry followed her back to the castle, he sensed the anticipation radiating from his classmates. Punishment seemed the likely outcome of this intervention. McGonagall led him through corridors in silence until they reached a classroom where she asked Professor Flitwick if she could borrow Wood for a moment. A burly fifth-year boy emerged, looking confused. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood," McGonagall announced. "Wood, I found you a seeker." Both Harry and Wood stared at her in surprise. "Are you serious, Professor?" Wood asked, his expression shifting from confusion to excitement as he evaluated Harry. "But he's a first year, I am perfectly aware of that," McGonagall said crisply. "But what I just witnessed was extraordinary." Mr. Potter intercepted a falling student mid-air with reflexes I've never seen in a first year. She turned to Harry. "Have you ever played Quidditch, Potter?" "No, Professor," Harry replied truthfully. "He caught Neville Longbottom from a 15-foot fall," McGonagall told Wood. "Didn't even sprain an ankle. I haven't seen spatial awareness like that since Charlie Weasley." Wood was now circling Harry like a prospector who'd discovered gold. "He has the build for a seeker too, light, speedy." He addressed Harry directly. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" "I understand the basic principles," Harry said, having read about the sport in Quidditch through the ages during his preparation for entering the wizarding world. 7 players, 4 balls, goals at each end of the pitch, seeker pursues the golden snitch to end the game. "He'll need a decent broom, Professor," Wood continued, now fully committed to the idea. "A Nimbus 2000 or a Clean Sweep 7, I'd recommend." "I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore about bending the first-year rule," McGonagall promised, her stern face showing rare animation. "Heaven knows, we need a better team than last year. Flattened in that last match by Slytherin, I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks." She fixed Harry with a serious look. "I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you for that stunt." Harry considered the unexpected development. Quidditch presented multiple advantages, enhancing his cover as a normal, if talented, student, providing structured physical training compatible with this world's expectations, and offering opportunities to study the magical community in a social context. "I'll train diligently, Professor," he promised. After McGonagall dismissed him, Harry considered his next move. The spontaneous recruitment suggested quicker adaptation to Hogwarts than he'd anticipated. If he were to effectively integrate, understanding this sport would be essential. He headed to the library. "She did what?" Hermione gasped later that evening in the common room. "Made me seeker," Harry repeated calmly. "Apparently it's unusual for first years." "Unusual?" Ron exclaimed. "It's unheard of. First years never make the house teams. You must be the youngest Quidditch player in a century," Harry finished, recalling the information from his afternoon research. "According to notable magical achievements in sport." "But what about the rule against first years having brooms?" Hermione pressed, looking concerned. "Surely they can't just ignore regulations for, McGonagall is speaking to Dumbledore about an exception," Harry explained. Ron shook his head in amazement. "This is brilliant. Wait until Malfoy finds out." As if summoned by his name, Draco Malfoy approached their table, flanked as always by Crabbe and Goyle. "Enjoying your last evening at Hogwarts, Potter?" he drawled. "I heard McGonagall dragged you off the grounds. When are they expelling you for that ridiculous stunt?" Harry regarded him neutrally. "Your information is incomplete." Draco's confidence faltered slightly at Harry's calm response. "We'll see about that. My father says students who endanger others don't last long here, regardless of their celebrity status." "Interesting perspective," Harry replied. Professor McGonagall seemed to think saving a falling student demonstrated qualities worth cultivating. Confusion flickered across Draco's face before he regained his sneering expression. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Ron interjected gleefully, "that Harry's not being punished, he's been made Seeker for Gryffindor." The look of shock on Malfoy's face was genuinely satisfying, Harry had to admit. The Slytherin opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. That's against the rules," he finally managed. "First years aren't allowed on house teams." "Exceptions can be made for exceptional circumstances," Harry said mildly. "Though I'd appreciate if you kept this information confidential until officially announced." "Team strategy, you understand." The implication that Harry was already thinking in terms of competitive tactics against Slytherin seemed to unsettle Draco further. Without another word, he turned and stalked away, his minions following. "That was brilliant," Ron grinned. "Did you see his face?" Harry considered the interaction analytically. "He'll report to his father. We should anticipate potential interference." "Always thinking 3 steps ahead, aren't you?" Hermione observed. Harry shrugged slightly. "Habit." "Well, I think it's irresponsible," Hermione declared. "You could have been seriously hurt today, jumping to catch Neville like that. And now they're rewarding you with a position that could get you hurt even worse." "Quidditch isn't that dangerous," Ron argued. "I mean, sure, people get injured sometimes, but, broken bones, concussions," Hermione counted off on her fingers. "Charlie Weasley dislocated his shoulder twice, according to Percy, and someone nearly died at the World Cup in 1473, risk assessment is part of any activity," Harry interjected calmly. "Quidditch presents manageable hazards compared to," he stopped himself before mentioning some of the training exercises Itachi had put him through. "Compared to alternatives." Hermione looked unconvinced but dropped the subject. Later that night, after his roommates had fallen asleep, Harry penned a detailed report to Itachi in their communication scroll. He explained his Quidditch appointment, the political implications, and his experiments with combining chakra and magic. Itachi's response appeared an hour later: "Your integration proceeds faster than anticipated. Use Quidditch to establish normal social patterns while observing team dynamics." The sport's emphasis on spatial awareness and split-second decisions aligns well with Shinobi training. Regarding magical chakra integration, proceed with caution. Record all experiments in detail. Monitor for chakra pathway strain or magical feedback. If you experience unusual symptoms, particularly related to your scar, cease experimentation immediately and inform me. The headmaster's interest in your abilities is predictable. Share only what serves your purposes. His motives remain unclear, neither ally nor enemy until proven otherwise. Train daily. Maintain chakra exercises. Adapt Shinobi techniques to wizard contexts where it provides tactical advantage without revealing critical abilities. You are making wise choices, Harry. The last line warmed him unexpectedly. Itachi was sparing with praise, making it all the more meaningful when offered. Harry rolled up the scroll, securing it with a chakra seal, and turned his attention to the scroll Flitwick had given him on magical flow theory. The professor's unexpected support offered another avenue for developing his hybrid techniques while maintaining his cover as an unusually talented, but not suspiciously alien, student. Balance, Harry reminded himself. The path forward required careful balance. The Nimbus 2000 arrived at breakfast a week later, delivered by 6 large screech owls. The long, thin package drew attention immediately, particularly from Draco Malfoy, who looked thunderstruck at the sight of an obvious broomstick being delivered to a first year. "That's a broomstick," he said loudly as Harry unwrapped it just enough to confirm its contents. "First years aren't allowed them." "It's not just any broomstick," Ron said, unable to contain himself. "It's a Nimbus 2000. And it's not against the rules with special permission," Harry added calmly, rewrapping the package. "Thank you for your concern about regulatory compliance, though." As they left the hall with the broomstick, Malfoy's frustrated expression suggested he was already composing a letter to his father. Harry made a mental note to prepare for potential administrative challenges. That evening, Harry arrived at the Quidditch pitch for his first training session with Wood. The Gryffindor captain's enthusiasm bordered on obsession as he explained the game in exhaustive detail, demonstrating plays with animated wooden models that zoomed around a miniature pitch. "Don't worry too much about the bludgers," Wood advised as he opened a trunk containing the 4 Quidditch balls. "The Weasley twins are our beaters, their job is keeping those away from you. The beaters create defensive perimeters and offensive disruption," Harry summarized, thinking in tactical terms. "While the chasers maintain possession and scoring momentum, and the keeper defends fixed positions." Wood blinked, momentarily thrown by Harry's analytical breakdown. Yeah, exactly. But the Seeker, that's you, has the most important job. You catch the golden snitch and end the game when the timing is strategically advantageous. Meaning we should be ahead by enough points that the 150-point bonus secures victory, Harry nodded. But if we're down by more than 150, I should delay capture until our chasers reduce the deficit. Wood stared at him. Most first-time players just focus on catching the thing as quickly as possible. Inefficient if team victory is the objective, Harry replied simply. A slow grin spread across Wood's face. McGonagall was right about you, Potter. You think differently. He pulled out a small golden ball from the trunk. This is the golden snitch. It's wicked fast and nearly impossible to see. Harry studied the walnut-sized ball as Wood released it. The snitch fluttered up, its golden wings beating rapidly as it darted around them. With his enhanced perception, even without activating the Sharingan, Harry could track its movements easily. I want to see what you can do on that broom first, Wood said. Then we'll release the snitch and see if you can catch it. Harry mounted the Nimbus 2000, immediately appreciating its responsiveness compared to the school brooms. When Wood gave him the signal, he kicked off, ascending in a controlled spiral that allowed him to test the broom's handling at increasing speeds. The sensation was exhilarating in a way few experiences had been. The broom responded to the slightest shift in weight or intent, almost like an extension of his body. Harry experimented with sharp turns, dives, and rapid directional changes, mapping the broom's capabilities methodically. On the ground, Wood was staring open-mouthed. Harry descended smoothly, landing beside the captain. Have you sure you've never flown before? Wood demanded. First time was at the flying lesson last week, Harry confirmed. That's... Wood shook his head in disbelief. That's not normal, Potter. Most wizards train for years to handle a broom with that kind of precision. Harry didn't explain how he'd applied Shinobi principles of body control and spatial awareness to flying. Instead, he simply said, the broom is well crafted. Very responsive. Right, Wood said, still looking stunned. Well, let's see how you do with the snitch, then. He released the golden ball again, giving it a 30-second head start before signaling Harry to pursue it. Harry kicked off, rising to a vantage point that offered maximum visibility across the pitch. He spotted the snitch hovering near the far goal posts and accelerated toward it. The ball darted away as he approached, executing an evasive pattern that would have confounded ordinary reflexes. Harry analyzed its movement algorithm, not truly random, but complex enough to appear unpredictable to most observers. He anticipated its next direction change and intercepted it with a precise maneuver, plucking it from the air effortlessly. When he landed, Wood was staring at him with an expression between shock and rapture. That was, you caught it in under a minute, he stammered. How did you even see it from that distance? Good eyesight, Harry replied truthfully, if incompletely. And it reflects light in a distinctive pattern. Wood ran a hand through his hair. Potter, if you play like that in matches, we're going to win the Quidditch Cup for sure. His expression grew serious. But we need to keep your abilities quiet. Element of surprise and all that. Harry nodded in agreement. Tactical advantage through information control. Wood laughed nervously. You know, sometimes you talk more like a general than a first year. I've had unusual training, Harry said simply. Well, whatever training it was, it's made you a natural seeker. Wood clapped him on the shoulder. We start team practice 3 times a week. Don't tell anyone about your speed or that catching time, let's keep Slytherin guessing until our first match. As they walked back to the castle, Harry considered how Quidditch would affect his training regimen. The sport offered physical conditioning compatible with his needs, while the strategic elements provided useful context for understanding wizard culture. More importantly, it gave him a socially acceptable outlet for abilities that might otherwise draw unwanted attention. A fortunate development, overall. October brought increasingly challenging classwork and the integration of Harry's private experiments. In charms, he continued refining his chakra-enhanced spellcasting under Flitwick's enthusiastic guidance. The tiny professor never questioned Harry's unusual approaches directly, but provided increasingly advanced materials that helped Harry understand the theoretical underpinnings of what he was intuitively attempting. Remarkable progress, Mr. Potter. Flitwick squeaked after Harry demonstrated a modified levitation charm that could selectively lift components of a complex object. You've essentially created a partial target variant that most wizards don't master until 6th year. In Transfiguration, Harry approached the subject from a different angle, using chakra not to enhance the spell, but to better visualize the transformation process. When McGonagall instructed them to turn matches into needles, Harry conceptualized the change as a nature transformation technique, similar to how Itachi had taught him to convert chakra elements. The result was a perfect silver needle on his first attempt, earning a rare smile from McGonagall and an envious glare from Hermione, who had only managed to make her match silvery and pointy. "How are you doing this?" she demanded later in the common room, her academic competitiveness overriding her usual politeness. "You hardly practice, yet you're performing spells perfectly on the first try." Harry considered how to explain without revealing too much. "I'm applying principles from my previous training," he said carefully. "The visualization techniques transfer effectively to magical practice." "But what techniques?" Hermione pressed. "You never explain specifically." Harry studied her for a moment. Her frustration was genuine, not just at being academically outperformed, but at her inability to understand the methodology behind his success. "Meditation," he offered finally. "Chakra sensing and manipulation. Hand sign sequences for focusing energy." He demonstrated a simple sequence used for basic fire techniques. These movements help structure internal energy paths, making the magic flow more precisely. Hermione watched intently, then attempted to replicate the hand signs. "Like this?" "Almost." Harry corrected her finger positions slightly. "The alignment creates a circuit of energy." For the next hour, Harry taught Hermione basic chakra meditation techniques, explaining how to sense the energy within herself. She couldn't manipulate chakra as Shinobi did, but the awareness exercises helped her conceptualize magical energy more tangibly. "It's fascinating," she breathed, her earlier frustration forgotten. "It's like I can almost feel the magic gathering before I cast a spell now." "That awareness improves control," Harry confirmed. "With practice, you'll notice refinements in your spellcasting." "Can you teach Ron too?" she asked eagerly. Harry nodded. "The basics, yes. Though different people respond to different methods." When Ron joined them later, Harry guided both through simplified exercises Itachi had taught him years ago. Ron struggled more with the meditative aspects but showed natural aptitude for the physical forms. "Bloody hell," he exclaimed after successfully using a modified stance to improve his levitation charm. "That actually worked. The feather didn't wobble at all." "Your magic responds better to physical focus than mental," Harry observed. "Common among those with natural athletic ability." Ron grinned proudly. "Wait until Fred and George see this. They think they're the only ones who can do impressive magic in the family." As October progressed, Harry established a routine: dawn training by the lake, classes during the day, Quidditch practice 3 evenings a week, and private experimentation at night. He continued his correspondence with Itachi, detailing his progress and observations about wizard magic. The hybrid techniques he was developing proved particularly effective in defense against the dark arts, though he was careful not to demonstrate too much in Quirrell's presence. Something about the stuttering professor continued to trigger warning signals, especially the strange chakra duality Harry sensed whenever near him. One evening after Quidditch practice, Harry decided to investigate this anomaly more directly. He tracked Quirrell to his office, concealing his presence with a basic shinobi stealth technique. Through the partially open door, he could hear the professor talking, but without his usual stutter. "Must move soon," Quirrell was saying. "The old fool suspects nothing, but Potter, the boy watches too closely." Harry activated his Sharingan, using its enhanced perception to peer through the narrow opening. What he saw confirmed his suspicions. Quirrell's chakra network showed two distinct signatures intertwined. More disturbing was the second signature's concentration at the back of Quirrell's head, beneath his turban. A parasitic presence. A possession of some kind. "Patience," came a high, cold voice that seemed to emanate from Quirrell himself, though his lips weren't moving. "We will have our opportunity at Samhain. The troll will provide adequate distraction." Troll. Distraction. Harry memorized these details with his Sharingan active, ensuring he would recall them perfectly. "And what of Potter?" Quirrell asked. "His abilities are unusual. Not typical wizard magic." "The boy is insignificant," the cold voice replied. "A curiosity, nothing more. Focus on the stone." The stone. Another piece of information. Harry retreated silently, processing what he'd learned. Quirrell was planning something involving a troll on Samhain, Halloween, as a distraction to acquire some kind of stone. The parasitic presence controlling him dismissed Harry as a threat, which provided tactical advantage. That night, Harry reported everything to Itachi through their communication scroll. His guardian's response was immediate and grave: "Possession jutsu of this nature is extremely dangerous. The cold voice and its dismissal of you suggest overconfidence, a weakness, but also an indicator of significant power. The stone likely refers to the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary alchemical artifact capable of producing the elixir of life and transforming metals to gold. More concerning is the entity's residence at the back of Quirrell's head, reminiscent of forbidden techniques for cheating death. Combined with your Scar's reaction to his presence, this suggests a connection to Voldemort himself. Do not confront directly. Observe. Gather intelligence. Prepare countermeasures for Halloween, but prioritize your cover identity. Remember, you are not expected to face such threats alone in this world. Strategic exposure of Quirrell's plans to Dumbledore may be the optimal approach." Harry considered Itachi's advice carefully. In the shinobi world, he would have been expected to handle such threats independently, or at least, that was how Itachi had trained him. But here, different rules applied. The political dynamics of Hogwarts meant involving authority figures might indeed be the most efficient strategy. But first, he needed more information about this Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel, Hermione read aloud from the massive tome she'd found in the library's restricted section, courtesy of Harry's pass from Flitwick. The only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance with astonishing powers. The stone can transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal. Ron whistled softly. No wonder someone's after it. Immortality and unlimited gold. Who wouldn't want that? Someone willing to use possession techniques and troll diversions, Harry noted grimly. He had shared his discoveries with Ron and Hermione after careful consideration. They had proven themselves trustworthy, and their knowledge of the wizarding world complemented his shinobi training. But why is the stone at Hogwarts? Hermione wondered. It seems irresponsible to keep something so valuable in a school full of children. Because it's the last place anyone would expect, Harry answered. And because Dumbledore is here, reportedly the only wizard Voldemort ever feared. Ron flinched at the name. Do you really think it's... You know who possessing Quirrell? The evidence suggests it, Harry said neutrally. My scar reacts in his presence. The chakra signature is fragmented, consistent with the soul damage described in accounts of his first defeat. We have to tell Dumbledore. Hermione insisted. With what proof? Harry countered. My observations alone wouldn't be sufficient, and revealing how I obtained them would expose capabilities best kept private for now. So what do we do? Ron asked. Just wait for Halloween and hope for the best. Harry shook his head. We prepare. We locate the stone's hiding place. We develop contingency plans for the troll distraction. You make it sound like a military operation, Hermione said, eyeing him curiously. Because it is, Harry replied simply. An infiltration with counter-infiltration response. Over the next 2 weeks, they pieced together the stone's defenses. Hermione overheard McGonagall mentioning the third-floor corridor to Flitwick, the same corridor Dumbledore had declared off-limits at the start of term. Ron's brothers mentioned a massive 3-headed dog they'd glimpsed while exploring forbidden areas. Harry himself used Shinobi stealth techniques to confirm these reports, identifying additional magical barriers beyond the creature. Each barrier likely corresponds to a different professor's expertise, Harry theorized as they compared notes in an empty classroom, secured with privacy charms Hermione had researched. The dog is probably Hagrid's contribution, he has an affinity for dangerous creatures. So Quirrell knows about all these defenses? Ron asked. He must, Hermione agreed. As a professor, he would have been involved in setting them up. Harry nodded. Which means we need to focus on the troll element, that's the variable they won't anticipate us knowing about. They developed a simple plan. When the troll distraction occurred, Hermione would alert McGonagall while Ron informed his brothers, who could help manage crowd control with their knowledge of secret passages. Harry would track Quirrell, intervening only if necessary to prevent the stone's theft. Remember, Harry cautioned, our primary goal is intelligence gathering and disruption, not direct confrontation. As Halloween approached, Harry increased his training regimen, incorporating specific techniques useful against larger opponents like trolls. He practiced chakra control exercises that would allow him to enhance his speed and strength without revealing the Sharingan unless absolutely necessary. The morning of Halloween, Harry received a brief message from Itachi, trust your training. Adapt to circumstances. Remember that this world has different rules of engagement than ours. Sometimes the most effective action is the one that allows proper authorities to function as intended. Your value lies not in solitary heroics but in strategic intervention at critical moments. Be safe, Harry. The unusual conclusion, a personal concern rather than tactical instruction, indicated Itachi's awareness of the situation's danger. Harry meditated on this guidance as he prepared for the day ahead, ensuring his mind was clear and focused for whatever challenges awaited. The Halloween feast was in full swing, the great hall decorated with floating jack-o'-lanterns and live bats swooping between the tables. Harry maintained vigilant observation of Quirrell throughout the meal, noting the professor's unusually tense posture and frequent glances at the exit. He's preparing to leave, Harry murmured to Ron and Hermione. Remember the plan. No unnecessary risks. Hermione nodded nervously. Be careful, Harry. Yeah, mate, Ron added. Trolls are seriously dangerous, even Charlie says they're nasty business. I'll observe only, Harry assured them, though he had prepared for combat if necessary. Suddenly, Quirrell burst through the doors of the great hall, his face a mask of terror quite different from his usual nervous demeanor. Troll, he gasped. In the dungeons. Thought you ought to know. He collapsed in a carefully orchestrated feint that Harry immediately recognized as theatrical. The hall erupted in chaos until Dumbledore set off purple firecrackers from his wand and ordered prefects to lead their houses back to dormitories. In the confusion, Harry signaled to Ron and Hermione, who nodded and moved to implement their roles, Ron toward his brothers, Hermione toward McGonagall. Harry slipped away from the Gryffindor line, applying a basic genjutsu to divert attention from his departure. He tracked Quirrell, who had recovered from his faint with suspicious speed and was now hurrying not toward the dungeons, but up the marble staircase toward the third floor. Maintaining a careful distance, Harry followed, his footsteps silent through chakra control. When Quirrell reached the forbidden corridor, he paused before the locked door, withdrawing his wand. "Alohomora," the professor whispered, and the lock clicked open. Harry concealed himself in the shadows, watching as Quirrell entered the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. From inside came the sound of deep, rumbling growls, followed by a melodious flute. The growls subsided into snores. Music to subdue the guardian beast, Harry noted. Efficient. He waited until Quirrell had presumably descended through whatever trap door lay beyond the dog, then approached the door himself. Peering through the crack with his Sharingan active, he observed the massive three-headed dog sleeping soundly, a bewitched flute playing beside it. A trapdoor lay open beneath one of the dog's massive paws. Harry considered his options: follow immediately, or wait for reinforcements as planned. The direct approach risked confrontation with a possessed Quirrell, while delay might allow the stone's theft. His decision was made for him when he heard rapid footsteps approaching from behind. Harry deactivated his Sharingan and turned to find Professors Snape and McGonagall hurrying toward him, with Hermione following at a distance. "Potter!" McGonagall exclaimed. "What in Merlin's name are you doing here?" Tracking Professor Quirrell, Harry replied calmly. "He's attempting to steal the Philosopher's Stone using the troll as a distraction." Both professors stared at him in shock. "How could you possibly know about the stone?" Snape demanded. "Research and observation," Harry answered simply. "Quirrell just entered that room and subdued the dog with music. He's likely proceeding through the additional defenses now." Snape's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but McGonagall had already drawn her wand. "Stay here, Potter," she ordered, then turned to Hermione. "You too, Miss Granger. Severus, we must alert Albus." "There's no time," Snape replied tersely. "If Quirrell reaches the stone, then we must stop him," McGonagall finished. "Potter, Granger, return to your dormitory immediately. This is not a matter for students." Harry considered disobeying but recalled Itachi's guidance about this world's different rules of engagement. "Professor," he said instead, "Quirrell is not acting alone. He's possessed by another entity, possibly Voldemort himself." The shock on both professors' faces confirmed they hadn't considered this possibility. "Preposterous," Snape began, but McGonagall raised a hand to silence him. "How do you know this, Potter?" she asked sharply. "My scar reacts in his presence," Harry explained, offering the most credible evidence without revealing his Sharingan observations. "And I've overheard him speaking to another voice when he believed himself alone." McGonagall and Snape exchanged grave looks. "Return to your dormitory," McGonagall repeated, her voice leaving no room for argument. "We will handle this matter." As the professors disappeared through the door, Harry turned to Hermione. "You got McGonagall," he observed. "Well done." She was already heading this way with Snape, Hermione admitted. "I think they suspected something too." She looked at him anxiously. "Should we really go back to the dormitory? What if they need help?" Harry considered the situation tactically. The professors were formidable magic users, but if Quirrell was indeed possessed by Voldemort, they might be unprepared for what awaited them. "We'll give them 15 minutes, he decided. "If they haven't returned by then, we implement contingency plan B." "Which is?" Hermione asked nervously. "Alerting Dumbledore directly and providing any intelligence that might help him intervene effectively." They retreated to a nearby classroom to wait, Harry extending his senses to monitor the corridor. After precisely 14 minutes, a massive magical surge emanated from the direction of the third-floor corridor, the clash of powerful spells, followed by an unearthly scream that made Harry's scar burn with sudden intensity. "Something's happened," he said, wincing slightly from the pain. We need to find Dumbledore. They didn't have to look far. The headmaster was striding purposefully down the corridor toward the forbidden door, his usually gentle face set in lines of grim determination. "Professor!" Hermione called out. "Professor Quirrell, he's trying to steal the stone." Dumbledore paused, regarding them with surprising calm. "I am aware, Miss Granger. I received your friend Mr. Weasley's message some minutes ago, along with rather detailed information about a troll distraction." His piercing blue eyes turned to Harry. Most curious that 3 first-year students should possess such specific knowledge of matters meant to be secret. "We can explain later, sir," Harry said urgently. "Professors McGonagall and Snape went after Quirrell 15 minutes ago." There was just a magical surge and a scream. Something in Harry's description caused Dumbledore's expression to sharpen. Without another word, he hurried toward the door, moving with surprising speed for a man of his age. "Stay here," he commanded over his shoulder. "This is beyond even your unusual capabilities, Mr. Potter." For once, Harry didn't argue. He had accomplished the mission objective, ensuring proper authorities intervened while maintaining his cover identity. Confronting Voldemort directly at this stage would be strategically unsound. "What do we do now?" Hermione whispered as Dumbledore disappeared through the door. "We wait," Harry replied. "And prepare our explanation." The aftermath unfolded in stages. First came the return of Professors McGonagall and Snape, both looking battle-worn but intact. Snape was limping badly, while McGonagall supported an unconscious figure between them, Quirrell, his turban missing and the back of his head obscured by hastily conjured bandages. Shortly after, Dumbledore emerged, carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. His expression was grave as he approached Harry and Hermione. "The situation has been contained," he informed them quietly. "Though not without cost. Professor Quirrell is gravely injured, and the entity possessing him has fled." "Voldemort," Harry stated rather than asked. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. "Yes, Mr. Potter. Though how you came to that conclusion remains a matter we must discuss." "And the stone?" Hermione asked anxiously. "Safe," Dumbledore assured her, patting the package. "Thanks in no small part to your timely warning. Though again, I find myself curious how 3 first years discovered not only the stone's existence but Quirrell's plans to steal it." "We observed and researched," Harry explained simply. Quirrell's behavior showed clear patterns of deception. The 3rd-floor corridor was explicitly forbidden, suggesting something valuable hidden there. Historical research identified Nicholas Flamel and his connection to you. The rest was logical deduction. It wasn't the complete truth. Harry omitted his Sharingan observations and eavesdropping, but it contained enough verifiable facts to be credible. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Most impressive, Mr. Potter. Few adult wizards could have pieced together such a complex puzzle." "We didn't act alone, sir," Hermione added quickly. "Ron Weasley was part of our research group." "Indeed. Mr. Weasley demonstrated remarkable presence of mind in alerting his brothers and myself simultaneously." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. "A most effective team you 3 have formed." Harry accepted the implicit praise with a nod. "Will Professor Quirrell recover?" Something shadowed Dumbledore's expression. "I fear not. Possession by such a dark entity exacts a terrible toll. He will be transferred to St. Mungo's Hospital, but his prognosis is poor." "And Voldemort?" Harry pressed. "Fled, as I mentioned. Weakened, but not destroyed." Dumbledore regarded Harry solemnly. "It seems your paths are destined to cross again, Mr. Potter, though perhaps not as soon as tonight might have dictated without your intervention." The headmaster straightened. "Now, I believe the Halloween feast was interrupted rather dramatically. As the troll has been secured by Professors Flitwick and Sprout in the dungeons, I suggest we all return to enjoy what remains of the celebration." As they walked back toward the Great Hall, Dumbledore added casually, "I would appreciate if you and your friends would visit my office tomorrow after breakfast, Mr. Potter. There are matters we should discuss more thoroughly in private." Harry nodded, recognizing both the courtesy of the request and its underlying command. "Of course, Professor." In the Great Hall, they found Ron waiting anxiously at the Gryffindor table. The feast had resumed, though subdued conversations about the troll incident dominated. "What happened?" Ron whispered as they joined him. "Did they stop Quirrell?" "Yes," Harry confirmed quietly. "Voldemort was possessing him, as we suspected. He's fled, and Quirrell is seriously injured." Ron paled slightly but looked relieved. "So the stone is safe?" Harry nodded. "Dumbledore has it. We're to meet him tomorrow morning to explain ourselves." "Brilliant," Ron groaned. "We'll probably be expelled for knowing too much." "I don't think so," Hermione said thoughtfully. He seemed almost impressed. Harry remained silent, processing the events analytically. The mission had succeeded, the stone was secured, Voldemort thwarted, and their involvement acknowledged without revealing his more unusual abilities. Most importantly, they had established themselves as observant and resourceful, but within the bounds of what exceptional students might accomplish. Later that night, he reported the outcome to Itachi, mission successful. Stone secured by Dumbledore after professors confronted Quirrell/Voldemort. Our intervention was limited to intelligence provision, maintaining cover while achieving objectives. Dumbledore suspects more than we've revealed, but seems impressed rather than suspicious. Meeting tomorrow to provide sanitized explanation. Itachi's response came quickly, well executed. The approach balanced effectiveness with appropriate restraint for your context. Dumbledore's interest is expected. Use tomorrow's meeting to reinforce your carefully constructed image while assessing his true knowledge and intentions. The confirmation of Voldemort's continued existence is significant. As suspected, the fragment within your scar connects to his survival method. Continue gathering information about soul magic in this world while developing countermeasures for future encounters. You handled this challenge with wisdom beyond your years, Harry. I am proud of your growth. The last line brought an unexpected warmth to Harry's chest. Itachi's approval had always been important to him, but explicit acknowledgement was rare. It confirmed he was successfully navigating the complexities of this world while honoring his guardian's teachings. With the immediate crisis resolved, Harry turned his attention to the next phase, preparing for Dumbledore's questions while continuing his exploration of hybrid magic chakra techniques. The stone incident had demonstrated the value of his unique training, but also highlighted the need for continued adaptation to wizarding methods and expectations. Balance, as always, would be the key. A most fascinating explanation, Mr. Potter, Dumbledore said, leaning back in his chair after Harry, Ron, and Hermione had recounted their investigation and actions regarding the Philosopher's Stone. Though I suspect there are certain details you've chosen to omit. Harry met the headmaster's penetrating gaze calmly. We've shared everything relevant to the events, Professor. Relevant, Dumbledore repeated thoughtfully. A carefully chosen word. Not quite the same as complete, is it? Beside Harry, Hermione shifted nervously while Ron looked confused. Harry maintained his composed expression. Few accounts are ever truly complete, sir, he replied. We've focused on how we discovered the stone's existence and Quirrell's plans. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Indeed. And most impressive detective work it was. Professor Flitwick speaks highly of your research abilities, Miss Granger, and the Weasley family's knowledge of Hogwarts' hidden aspects is well established. His gaze returned to Harry. But certain insights, particularly regarding Professor Quirrell's possession, suggest observational methods beyond typical student capabilities. Harry considered his response carefully. Dumbledore clearly suspected his use of the Sharingan or other Shinobi techniques, but lacked specific evidence. My upbringing made me sensitive to certain signs others might miss, he acknowledged. And my scar reacts to Voldemort's presence, a connection neither of us fully understands yet, I believe. Something flickered in Dumbledore's expression, confirmation, perhaps, of a theory he already held. Indeed, the headmaster said softly. That connection warrants further exploration, when you're ready. He straightened in his chair. For now, I must acknowledge that your actions, while undertaken without authorization, ultimately prevented a catastrophe. 20 points to each of you for exceptional service to the school. Ron grinned broadly while Hermione beamed with pride. Harry simply nodded in acceptance. However, Dumbledore continued, his tone firming, I must insist that future discoveries of similarly serious nature be brought directly to the staff's attention. While your investigation showed remarkable acumen, confronting such dangers yourselves is not acceptable. We didn't actually confront Quirrell, Hermione pointed out quickly. We just alerted the professors. A wise decision, Dumbledore agreed. One that demonstrates judgment sometimes lacking in those much older than yourselves. He rose from his desk. You are free to go, except you, Mr. Potter. I would appreciate a few more minutes of your time. Ron and Hermione glanced at Harry uncertainly. He gave them a slight nod, indicating they should leave without him. After they departed, Dumbledore gestured for Harry to remain seated. Now that we are alone, the headmaster said, returning to his chair, perhaps we might speak more directly about certain matters. Such as? Harry asked, maintaining his calm exterior while mentally preparing for more probing questions. Your eyes, for instance. Dumbledore's gaze was penetrating. Professor Snape reported a most unusual transformation during your potions class some weeks ago. A temporary change to red, with a distinctive pattern. Harry remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. This Sharingan, as you called it in our previous meeting, Dumbledore continued. I confess I've consulted various magical texts regarding eye-based abilities and found nothing quite matching the description. Yet Professor McGonagall witnessed it during your sorting, and Professor Snape during the potions incident. It's not a magical ability as wizards understand magic, Harry finally said. As I explained previously, it's a technique from my guardian's world. Yes, your mysterious guardian from another dimension. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. A most extraordinary claim, yet one that would explain certain anomalies in your magical signature that have puzzled our professors. Harry raised an eyebrow slightly. You've been monitoring my magic. Nothing so invasive, Dumbledore assured him. But experienced educators develop a sense for their students' magical patterns. Yours exhibits unusual harmonics, shall we say. He leaned forward. Whatever world raised you, Harry, whatever techniques you've learned there, I want you to know that Hogwarts remains your home, should you wish it to be. The sentiment echoed his words after the first meeting in his office. Harry recognized the genuine offer beneath the strategic information gathering. I appreciate that, Professor, he replied neutrally. Though home is a complex concept when you've lived between worlds. Indeed it is. Dumbledore's expression softened slightly. Your guardian, he has treated you well. The question caught Harry off guard with its apparent sincerity. He considered Itachi, stern but fair, demanding but protective, a man who had killed his own clan yet saved a lost child from another world. He gave me everything I needed, Harry answered truthfully. Structure. Purpose. Skills to survive. Understanding of power and its responsibilities. But perhaps not everything you wanted? Dumbledore suggested gently. Harry frowned slightly. Wants are secondary to needs in his philosophy. And mine. A stoic perspective, Dumbledore nodded. Worthy in many respects, yet incomplete. There is value in joy, in connection, in the seemingly frivolous aspects of life that bring color to our existence. Harry thought of his growing friendships with Ron and Hermione, the exhilaration of flying, the satisfaction of mastering new magic. Things Itachi might categorize as secondary, yet undeniably enriching. Perhaps, he acknowledged. I'm still, evaluating certain aspects of this world. As any wise traveler should. Dumbledore smiled. I will not press you further today, Harry. But know that my door remains open should you wish to discuss your unique perspective, or simply seek guidance as any student might. Harry recognized the dismissal and rose to leave. At the door, he paused. Professor? Yes, Harry. Voldemort will return, won't he? Last night wasn't the end. Dumbledore's expression grew grave. I fear not. He has taken steps to ensure his survival beyond what most wizards would consider possible. Steps that connect, in ways we do not fully understand, to you. To my scar, Harry specified, touching the lightning mark. To what happened that night? Yes. Dumbledore studied him carefully. Does your guardian have theories about this connection? Harry considered how much to reveal. He believes a fragment of something foreign attached itself to me during Voldemort's attack. Something that resonates with certain abilities from his world. Dumbledore's eyes widened fractionally, the first genuinely surprised reaction Harry had seen from him. A most insightful theory, he said carefully. One with troubling implications we should explore further, when you're ready. Harry nodded and turned to leave, sensing that both he and Dumbledore needed time to process the implications of their exchange. And Harry? Dumbledore called after him. The Quidditch match against Slytherin next weekend. I look forward to seeing these exceptional reflexes of yours in a more sporting context. Harry allowed himself a small smile at the diplomatic change of subject. So do I, Professor. News of Quirrell's condition and the troll incident spread through Hogwarts like wildfire, though the details regarding the Philosopher's Stone remained confidential. By unspoken agreement, Harry, Ron, and Hermione kept their involvement quiet, though their 60 collective house points raised questions among their classmates. Probably for solving the troll situation somehow, Fred suggested to a curious Gryffindor. Our brothers got a knack for trouble, the profitable kind. Classes resumed with Dumbledore temporarily taking over defense against the dark arts until a replacement could be found. The headmaster's lessons proved illuminating, not just in magical technique, but in the philosophy underpinning defensive magic. Intent shapes outcome, Dumbledore explained during one particularly memorable class. The most powerful shield charm will falter if cast with uncertainty, while even a simple defensive spell performed with absolute conviction can repel formidable attacks. Harry recognized parallels to chakra control principles Itachi had taught him. Both systems emphasized mental clarity and purpose, though wizards relied more on emotional components than the precise visualization Shinobi used. November brought the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. As Harry prepared in the locker room, listening to Wood's increasingly frantic pep talk, he centered himself through meditation techniques. Worried, Potter? Fred asked, noticing Harry's closed eyes and steady breathing. Focusing, Harry corrected. Clearing extraneous thoughts to optimize performance. George grinned. He means, getting in the zone. Fred and I do the same thing before matches, though usually with more joke-telling and less, whatever that Zen thing is you're doing. When they walked onto the pitch, Harry analyzed the conditions methodically: clear skies, moderate wind from the northwest, visibility excellent. The Slytherin team looked imposing, particularly their seeker, Terence Higgs, who studied Harry with obvious skepticism. "Mount your brooms," called Madame Hooch. At her whistle, 15 brooms rose into the air, and the match began. Harry immediately ascended above the main action, establishing a vantage point from which to observe both the snitch and overall game flow. Below, the Gryffindor chasers executed the formations Wood had drilled them on, while Fred and George sent bludgers rocketing toward Slytherin players with tactical precision. The Slytherin strategy became apparent quickly: physical intimidation combined with rule bending when Hooch wasn't looking. Their beaters focused particularly on Harry, sending bludgers his way whenever possible. Harry evaded these attacks with minimal movement, using chakra-enhanced perception to track the bludgers' trajectories and shifting just enough to avoid impact. His efficient style drew gasps from the crowd, particularly when he avoided a bludger by simply tilting his head slightly, the heavy iron ball missing him by inches. And Potter displays some extraordinary dodging skills. Lee Jordan, the Weasley twins' friend, commented from the announcer's box. Never seen reflexes like that from a first year, or anyone, really. Harry ignored the commentary, focusing on game dynamics while searching for the snitch. Gryffindor was up 30 points to 20, but Slytherin's aggressive style was taking its toll. He needed to locate the snitch soon, before their physical advantage became decisive. Suddenly, Harry's broom gave a violent lurch. For a moment, he thought he'd been hit by a bludger he hadn't seen, but then it happened again, more forcefully. The Nimbus 2000 was trying to buck him off. Harry gripped the handle tightly, channeling chakra to his hands for better adhesion. Someone was jinxing his broom, a sophisticated piece of magic beyond student capabilities. He scanned the stands quickly, looking for the source. In the teachers' section, he spotted Snape staring at him unblinkingly, muttering continuously under his breath. But the positioning was wrong. Snape was in his line of sight, not behind him where the magical interference seemed to originate. Using peripheral vision, Harry identified a second figure behind Snape, a wizard in ministry robes he didn't recognize, also maintaining eye contact and muttering. There was his likely culprit. Harry had three options: continue resisting the jinx through chakra control, alert someone to the tampering, or create a distraction himself. The third option offered the most control with minimal exposure of his abilities. Carefully maintaining his grip, Harry reached into his robe and withdrew a single shuriken, one of the few he kept concealed despite Dumbledore's weapons prohibition. With a precisely calculated movement hidden from the crowd's view, he launched it toward the stands. The shuriken didn't target either Snape or the Ministry Wizard directly, that would be too obvious and potentially dangerous. Instead, it embedded itself in the wooden support beam just behind them, the impact causing both to break their concentration as they turned to investigate the sudden noise. Immediately, Harry's broom stopped bucking. He re-established control and resumed his search for the snitch, noting that the Ministry Wizard was now being engaged in conversation by Professor McGonagall, whether by coincidence or design, he couldn't tell. Minutes later, Harry spotted the snitch hovering near the Slytherin goal posts. He accelerated toward it, drawing the attention of the Slytherin Seeker, who moved to intercept. What followed was a showcase of the flying techniques Harry had developed by combining Shinobi spatial awareness with magical broom control. Rather than simply racing Higgs to the snitch, Harry executed a complex feint, diving sharply as if pursuing something near the ground, then cutting back upward at an impossible angle when Higgs committed to following. Potter pulls off a Wronski feint variation I've never seen before. Jordan shouted excitedly. Higgs is completely wrong-footed. With the Slytherin Seeker out of position, Harry closed on the snitch, which darted away in evasive patterns. He tracked its movements with heightened perception, not quite activating his Sharingan but utilizing the enhanced awareness his training provided. The snitch made a sudden break toward the Gryffindor end, passing directly through the path of an oncoming bludger. Harry calculated trajectories instantly. If he continued pursuit, the bludger would hit him squarely in the chest. Instead of pulling away, Harry rotated his body around the broom handle in a corkscrew maneuver, the bludger passing through the space his torso had occupied a split second earlier. Without losing momentum, he extended his hand and closed his fingers around the snitch as he completed the rotation. The stadium erupted in disbelieving cheers as Jordan screamed, "Potter's caught the snitch. Gryffindor wins, 180-20. And with the most extraordinary capture I've ever seen." Harry descended to where his teammates were landing, the snitch's wings still fluttering against his closed fist. Wood reached him first, looking like he might kiss Harry or faint, possibly both. "That was, I've never, how did you," the captain stammered incoherently. Fred and George hoisted Harry onto their shoulders, chanting, "Potter! Potter!" as the rest of the team and Gryffindor supporters swarmed the pitch. Amid the celebration, Harry maintained his situational awareness, noting Professor Snape's calculating gaze and Dumbledore's thoughtful expression from the stands. More concerning was the ministry wizard, who was now engaged in intense conversation with another official Harry hadn't noticed before. Political complications, Harry assessed. His display of unusual flying abilities had drawn attention beyond Hogwarts, something he'd need to address strategically. As the team carried him toward the locker rooms, Harry spotted Ron and Hermione pushing through the crowd to reach him. Hermione's face was alight with excitement, while Ron looked positively awestruck. "That was incredible!" Hermione exclaimed when they reached him. "But Harry, your broom, it was being jinxed." "We saw Snape muttering and staring at you," Ron added. "Never took his eyes off you, not even to blink." "It wasn't Snape," Harry corrected quietly. "It was the ministry official behind him. Snape was actually performing a counter-jinx, that's why he maintained eye contact." Ron looked skeptical. "Snape, helping you? No way." His lip movement patterns were consistent with protective incantations, Harry explained. The ministry wizards were aggressive, and the magical interference ceased when both were distracted. "But why would a ministry official try to jinx your broom?" Hermione asked, horrified. "Information gathering, most likely," Harry theorized. "Testing my capabilities and responses under duress." That's awful." Hermione sputtered. "They could have killed you." "Unlikely," Harry replied calmly. "The jinx was designed to unseat, not destroy. A calibrated test, not an assassination attempt." Ron shook his head in amazement. "You say that like it's normal to analyze someone trying to knock you off your broom 50 feet in the air." "Threat assessment is a standard response," Harry shrugged slightly. The celebration continued into the evening, with the Gryffindor common room transformed into an impromptu party venue courtesy of food and drinks smuggled in by the Weasley twins. Harry participated minimally, accepting congratulations while observing the social dynamics with analytical interest. Later that night, after his roommates had fallen asleep, Harry recorded the day's events in his communication scroll for Itachi. He described the jinxed broom incident, his countermeasures, and the ministry officials' presence at what should have been a routine school match. Itachi's response arrived an hour later. "The ministry's interest is concerning but predictable. Your Quidditch performance, while strategically valuable for integration, has accelerated official scrutiny. We must adapt accordingly." The jinx incident suggests political factions within wizard governance are assessing your capabilities directly rather than relying on school reports. This indicates higher-level interest than previously anticipated. Recommendations: 1. Maintain current performance levels in public settings, but avoid further displays that significantly exceed peer capabilities. 2. Develop stronger relationships with authority figures who can provide political protection. Dumbledore remains the optimal connection. 3. Consider selective demonstration of more conventional magical talent to establish a public baseline that masks your true abilities. 4. Continue chakra magic integration experiments privately, documenting results for future advantage. Most importantly, remain vigilant regarding your scar's reactions. If the fragment within you responded to Voldemort's presence through Quirrell, further manifestations may occur as you develop your abilities. Your adaptation continues to impress, Harry. Few shinobi could navigate such complex political waters while maintaining their core training. Harry contemplated Itachi's analysis as he prepared for sleep. The political dimensions of this world continued to surprise him. Unlike the straightforward mission parameters of shinobi life, wizard society operated through layers of agenda and influence that required constant recalibration of approach. Yet there was something stimulating about the challenge. Itachi had trained him to excel in combat and stealth, but this environment demanded growth in different dimensions: social integration, political awareness, and the balance between revealing and concealing his true capabilities. As he drifted towards sleep, Harry realized that despite the complications, he was finding genuine satisfaction in the process. Perhaps Dumbledore had been right about one thing: there was value in aspects of life beyond mere survival and duty. The thought would have troubled the Harry who first arrived at platform 9 3/4, but now it simply felt like another form of adaptation. growing stronger in ways Itachi might not have anticipated, but would surely appreciate. As November gave way to December, a new defense against the dark arts professor arrived, Auror John Dawlish, temporarily seconded from the ministry. His teaching style contrasted sharply with Quirrell's nervous ineffectuality, focusing on practical applications and real-world scenarios. Defense isn't about memorizing counter curses, Dawlish explained during their first lesson. It's about situational awareness, threat assessment, and appropriate response selection. The most powerful spell is useless if you don't see the attack coming. Harry appreciated this pragmatic approach, which aligned closely with Shinobi tactical principles. During practical exercises, he was careful to demonstrate solid but unremarkable skills, following Itachi's advice about establishing a public baseline that wouldn't draw further ministry scrutiny. This restraint proved challenging when Dawlish announced the establishment of a dueling club shortly before the Christmas holidays. Supervised combat practice builds reflexes and confidence, the Auror explained to the assembled students in the Great Hall, which had been cleared of tables and transformed into a dueling arena. We'll begin with simple disarming and shielding exercises, paired by your group. Harry was partnered with Draco Malfoy, an arrangement he suspected was not coincidental. The Slytherin had been unusually quiet since the Quidditch match, observing Harry with calculating interest rather than his previous sneering antagonism. "Scared, Potter?" Draco asked as they took positions opposite each other on the dueling strip. "Focused," Harry corrected calmly. "Remember, disarming charms only." Dawlish called out. "On my mark, begin." "Expelliarmus!" Draco cried immediately, launching a red bolt of magic toward Harry. Harry could have dodged easily, the spell's trajectory was clearly telegraphed, but instead chose to counter with his own disarming charm, precisely timed to intercept Draco's. Expelliarmus! The spells collided in midair with a shower of sparks, canceling each other out. Draco looked momentarily surprised before firing again, this time with greater force. Harry responded with a calculated series of moves, blocking the second spell with a shield charm, sidestepping the third with minimal movement, and timing his counterspell to coincide with Draco's brief recovery pause. Expelliarmus! This time, his spell struck true, sending Draco's wand spinning from his hand. The execution was perfect, effective but not flashy, demonstrating skill without revealing his full capabilities. "Excellent technique, Potter," Dawlish called, retrieving Draco's wand and returning it to him. "Clean disarm with minimal wasted movement. 5 points to Gryffindor." Draco accepted his wand back with a tight expression that wasn't quite anger, more a reassessment of Harry's capabilities. Again, Dawlish instructed. "Malfoy, try varying your timing." Their second exchange followed a similar pattern, though Draco attempted a feint before casting. Harry recognized the tactic instantly but allowed it to appear momentarily effective before countering with precision. "You're holding back," Draco said quietly as they reset positions for a third round. "I saw what you did in that Quidditch match. This isn't your full ability." Harry met his gaze steadily. "Neither is it yours." Something shifted in Draco's expression, a flash of respect, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement of Harry's insight. The Slytherin's public persona of entitled arrogance concealed a more calculating mind than most gave him credit for. Their third exchange was more sophisticated, with both executing more complex movements and spell timing. Harry maintained his controlled performance, demonstrating solid technique without the supernatural reflexes he'd shown during Quidditch. As the session ended, Dawlish announced that advanced students would be invited to specialized training in the coming months. Those showing particular aptitude will have opportunities to develop combat magic beyond the standard curriculum, he explained, his gaze lingering briefly on Harry. "That means you, mate," Ron said as they left the Great Hall. "You were brilliant." "I was adequate," Harry corrected. "Nothing exceptional." "That's exactly why it was brilliant," Hermione said shrewdly. After that Quidditch display, everyone was watching to see something spectacular. By demonstrating solid but normal skills, you've actually reduced scrutiny. Harry nodded, pleased by her perceptiveness. Exactly. Hang on, Ron frowned. You mean you deliberately didn't show your real abilities? Why? The Ministry is already interested in Harry's capabilities, Hermione explained before Harry could respond. After the broom jinxing incident, it's clear they're watching him closely. Showing exceptional dueling skills would only increase that attention. Political modulation, Harry confirmed. Establishing appropriate public baselines. Ron shook his head. You two are scary sometimes, you know that. Normal first years don't think about political modulation or whatever. Normal first years weren't raised by interdimensional ninja guardians, Hermione pointed out reasonably. Harry's lips quirked in the slight smile his friends had come to recognize as genuine amusement. There is that. As the Christmas holidays approached, Harry received an unexpected invitation to stay with the Weasleys during the break. He had planned to remain at Hogwarts, using the quiet period for intensive training and research, but Ron's mother had insisted after hearing Harry would otherwise be alone for the holidays. Mum won't take no for an answer, Ron explained, handing Harry the letter. Says no one should be alone at Christmas, especially not her son's best friend. The concept of best friend still felt foreign to Harry, though not unpleasant. His relationship with Ron and Hermione had evolved beyond tactical alliance into something he valued for its own sake, another adaptation to this world he hadn't anticipated. Your family has 7 children, Harry noted. Adding another person creates logistical complications. Ron laughed. That's exactly why one more doesn't matter. The burrow's already chaos, what's a bit more? After consulting with Itachi, who suggested the social integration benefits outweighed the temporary training interruption, Harry accepted the invitation. Hermione would be visiting her parents, but promised to research certain magical theories they'd been discussing when she returned. As they boarded the Hogwarts Express for the journey back to London, Harry reflected on the term's developments. He had established himself as talented but not suspiciously exceptional, formed genuine social connections, and navigated political complexities while continuing his private training and research. Most importantly, he had begun to integrate the seemingly disparate aspects of his identity, the disciplined shinobi Itachi had raised and the wizard discovering his heritage. The process wasn't complete, but for the first time, Harry felt the possibility of true synthesis rather than compartmentalization. The Hogwarts Express pulled away from Hogsmeade Station, carrying Harry toward another new experience, a family Christmas. He wondered what Itachi would make of such a concept, with its emphasis on emotional connection and celebration rather than practicality. Perhaps, Harry thought as he watched the Scottish countryside slide past, there were things from this world that might eventually enrich the shinobi path as well. Balance, after all, worked in both directions. Chapter 3, Shadows of the Past Focus, Moral Dilemmas and Emotional Stakes. Memories surface, Harry experiences visions connecting him to both his parents and Voldemort. These visions intensify when he uses his Sharingan, suggesting a deeper connection between his eyes and his scar. Moral challenge, Harry discovers information about Sirius Black and the Secret Keeper betrayal through his investigation of his past. He must decide whether to pursue vigilante justice, the ninja way, or trust the wizarding legal system. Itachi's legacy. Through flashbacks, we see more of Harry's training with Itachi, including the moral lessons about power, sacrifice, and protecting others. These lessons conflict with the wizarding world's more black and white view of good and evil. Emotional growth, Harry forms deeper bonds with select friends who prove themselves trustworthy. His ability to form these connections represents growth beyond Itachi's more isolated existence. Subplot escalation, Voldemort makes a desperate attempt to obtain the stone, forcing Harry to intervene. Unlike canon, Harry approaches this as a mission, methodically disabling traps and confronting Quirrell with strategic precision. Ethical dilemma, Harry must decide how much of his power to reveal in the confrontation with Quirrell/Voldemort. Using his most powerful techniques could expose capabilities he wants to keep secret. Chapter Climax, Harry confronts Quirrell/Voldemort, using a combination of wizard magic and ninja techniques. The clash triggers a resonance between Harry's Sharingan and Voldemort's soul fragment, causing both pain and a strange moment of connection that hints at the Horcrux truth. Chapter 4, Between Two Worlds Focus, Large-Scale Threats and Harry Claiming His Path. Summer Interlude. Harry uses dimensional jutsu, taught by Itachi, to briefly return to the ninja world, updating his mentor on events and receiving advanced training. The strain of crossing dimensions is significant, emphasizing that Harry must ultimately choose one world. Return with purpose. Harry comes back to Hogwarts with new resolve and abilities, including early mastery of a Mangekyo Sharingan ability that came at an emotional cost during his summer with Itachi. Large-scale threat. The dimensional crossing weakened barriers between worlds, allowing a threat from the ninja world to pursue Harry into the wizarding world. This creates a crisis that neither wizard nor ninja techniques alone can solve. Worlds collide. Hogwarts faces a threat it's unprepared for, while Harry struggles with explaining the ninja world to his wizard friends. Cultural misunderstandings create additional conflict. Integration of abilities. Harry fully embraces both halves of his heritage, finding ways to combine wizard and ninja techniques that represent his unique path rather than just mimicking either tradition. Subplot resolution. The dimensional threat connects to Voldemort, revealing how the Dark Lord had been researching methods to access other dimensions and sources of power beyond the wizarding world. Identity resolution. Harry makes peace with his complex identity, neither fully wizard nor ninja, but something new. He stops trying to perfectly emulate Itachi and begins developing his own ninja way, that incorporates wizard values. Chapter Climax. A final battle that requires Harry to protect both Hogwarts and the secret of the ninja world, culminating in a technique that combines the Sharingan's power with wizard magic in a way never before seen in either world. Epilogue. Harry communicates with Itachi across dimensions, sharing his growth and decisions. The mentor-student relationship evolves as Harry begins to forge his own path while honoring both of his worlds. Major character dynamics. Harry Potter, disciplined, observant, and strategic. Values efficiency and preparation. Struggles with forming emotional connections after years of training with the stoic Itachi. His character development centers on maintaining his shinobi discipline while opening his heart to friendship and the wonder of the wizarding world. Itachi Uchiha, primarily in flashbacks Harry's mentor and father figure. Saw in Harry a chance at redemption after the Uchiha massacre. Taught Harry not just ninja techniques but philosophical approaches to power and responsibility. Knows Harry must forge his own path in the wizarding world. Hermione Granger, initially intimidated by Harry's different approach to magic, but quickly becomes fascinated by the logical underpinnings of his techniques. Becomes both friend and intellectual rival who helps Harry articulate and theorize his intuitive understanding of how chakra and magic interact. Ron Weasley, takes longer to warm up to Harry, initially finding his intensity and different cultural references alienating. Eventually appreciates Harry's loyalty and strategic mind, becoming a bridge that helps Harry understand wizard cultural norms and traditions. Albus Dumbledore, cautiously optimistic about Harry's unique upbringing, but concerned about the implications of shinobi training on a child. Represents the more compassionate but sometimes naive wizard approach to power, contrasting with Itachi's harsh but pragmatic teachings. Severus Snape, recognizes aspects of himself in Harry's disciplined, compartmentalized mind. Conflicted about Harry's abilities, seeing both James Potter's talent for bending rules and Lily's fierce protectiveness. Becomes a reluctant source of insight for Harry about his birth parents. Draco Malfoy, initially attempts to establish dominance through traditional pure-blood channels, but is comprehensively outmaneuvered by Harry. Evolves from simple antagonist to a more complex rival studying Harry's techniques and approaches, eventually developing a grudging respect. Antagonist progression, school-level antagonists, begins with Draco and other students who challenge Harry based on prejudice or jealousy of his abilities. Institutional opposition, ministry officials and some teachers who fear Harry's different powers and seek to control or limit him. Quirrell/Voldemort, the immediate magical threat, but approached by Harry from a shinobi perspective of mission objectives rather than heroics. Dimensional threat, a higher-level antagonist that emerges from the weakened barriers between worlds, potentially connected to both Voldemort's ambitions and enemies from the ninja world who have tracked Itachi's chakra signature through Harry. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.